Wow, and Arsenie's right on time as well. Welcome, everyone. I want to call the June 29th City Council meeting to order. There are no excused absences this evening. And before we begin, I'd like to make a change to the agenda to move regular business item C, AB 9192, Issaquah School District Interlocal Agreement, Joint Use Development of Facilities Programs to occur before the park bond renewal. So right now, that is item C, park bond is item B. We would flip those two around. And is there any objection to swapping those two? Not seeing any. That is how we will proceed for today's order of business. We now want to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me if you're willing. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the next item of business is ID 2049, Disability Pride Month Proclamation. And we're going to invite Roshni from Kindring to the lectern. I will meet you up there. Whereas the American with Disabilities Act, ADA, was passed by the U.S. Congress on July 26, 1990 to ensure the civil rights of citizens with disabilities. And whereas the ADA is recognized as one of the most important civil rights laws in history, whereas the City of Issaquah acknowledges the barriers and challenges faced by individuals with disabilities, including societal attitudes, built and architectural barriers, lack of accessibility, discrimination, and unequal opportunities. And whereas Disability Pride Month is a time to celebrate the achievements, contributions, and resiliency of individuals with disabilities in our community and to promote inclusion, acceptance, and understanding of disability as a natural part of human diversity. Whereas we appreciate the efforts of disability rights activists, organizations, and advocates who work tirelessly to advance the rights, independence, and well-being of individuals with disabilities and to create a more inclusive and accessible world for all. Now, therefore, I, Mark Mullet, Mayor of the City of Issaquah, do hereby proclaim the month of July 2026 to be Disability Pride Month in the City of Issaquah and invite the community and join me in celebrating individuals with disabilities. Wally, do you want to do the picture first? Sure. We'll do the Rosh, no, then you're going to take your mic is yours.
Good evening, Mayor Mullet, council members, and city staff. I am Roshni Karthikeyan, and I serve as the communications lead at Kindring. I'm here tonight on behalf of Kindring and as a resident of Issaquah to thank you for recognizing Disability Pride Month. As you may know, Kindring is a local nonprofit serving children with disabilities, developmental delays, and diverse needs. We provide early supports, pediatric therapies, inclusive preschool, and more. Last year, we served 126 young children from the city of Issaquah. So why is Disability Pride important to Kindring? It is important because we work with lots of wonderful little kids with disabilities who will grow up into wonderful adults with disabilities, and we want them to grow up in a world that supports, includes, and celebrates them for who they are. Morgan, a Kindring parent, shared, open quote, "I celebrate Disability Pride because I am so incredibly proud of my daughter. She faces challenges that many people never see, yet she meets the world with determination, resilience, and one of the biggest smiles I've ever known. Watching her navigate obstacles, finding joy in little things, and continue to grow into exactly who she is, has taught me so much. Disability Pride is about celebrating her, honoring her experiences, and recognizing the strength, value, and beauty she brings into the world just by being herself," close quote. And that is exactly why what you're doing with this proclamation today. You're sending a clear message to our families that you care about their kids now, you will care about them as adults, and you will treat them with the respect and dignity that they deserve. We appreciate the city promoting disability inclusion in this small but powerful way. On behalf of Kindring, once again, thank you all so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Next is ID 2046, Parks and Community Services Month, and I think we have Jeff Watley here. And, whereas Parks, Recreation, and Community Services are an integral part of our community, and whereas Parks and Community Services strengthen Issaquah's identity by providing exceptional parks, trails, green spaces, and recreation facilities that reflect and celebrate community character, history, culture, aesthetics, and landscape. And yes, all parks people keep coming up. This is good. Whereas Issaquah Parks and Community Services fosters social cohesiveness and creates memorable experiences through recreational, arts, and human service programs that provide opportunities to come together, promote social equity, connect social networks, and ensure the entire community has access to these program benefits. And whereas Issaquah Parks and Community Services helps to sustain and steward our natural resources by protecting open space and habitat, connecting people to nature, promoting the vital ecological function of our city-owned public land, and increasing our resilience in the face of natural disaster, threats, and climate change. Now, therefore, I, Mark Mullet, Mayor of the City of Issaquah, do hereby proclaim July 2026 to be Parks and Community Services Month in the City of Issaquah, and invite the community to join me in thanking the staff of the Parks and Community Service Department for their service and outstanding contributions. Okay, are we doing a bigger joint photo, Wally, before? We'll do it with the whole team.
Yeah, please.
I don't know. No, we're in a different backdrop. We're mixing it up.
I'd introduce you. Well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. As the proclamation certainly would suggest, this department is a compilation of a lot of diverse professionals and a lot of diverse services provided to the community. This is very well represented in some of the staff who are here to join us. I'm seeing if Licia Monahan from Human Services joined as well. She didn't, but let me introduce. This certainly, again, reflects the diversity and just the value and strength of this department. Amy Dukes with our arts team, arts manager. Brandon Festus with our recreation team at the community center. Morgan Sheehan, park operations, and Robin Spear in park planning. When you think about recreation and human services and arts and park operations and park planning, we really are a five-ring circus. They are all connected. They all do make sense. It's an amazing team that really loves this community and loves helping Issaquah be a better place day by day. So thank you so much.
Okay. The next item of business is audience comments. Comments can be made in person or virtual. And if you sign in advance, you will be called on first. And if you're doing it virtually, you can raise your virtual hand. If you're on the phone, you have the option to do *3. As a reminder, written comments can also be submitted anytime to citycouncil@issaquah.gov. And Madam Clerk, we want to start calling up the folks who signed up.
Sure. Cassidy Zhu. Is Cassidy here? Okay, next, Chandra Ryder.
Good evening. My name is Chandra Ryder, and I live in the Tallis neighborhood with my wife, Sarah. Before I get started, I want to thank the City Council, the Mayor, and the City Administrator. Over the last couple of months since we started coming to council meetings, we have discovered that we are very lucky in Issaquah to have a leadership team that is so engaged in the community and really appreciates the input and listens to the input and takes that feedback seriously. We are proud to support a lot of the initiatives that the council has put forward and approved, such as the TID Performance Improvement Plan, the environmental plans. We're happy to support the Opportunity Center tonight and the Parks Bond. I'm also going to be commenting on the appointment of our new police chief, Mylette, and that's again where I want to extend my thanks to everybody that I'm looking at for taking our comments and our feedback seriously and helping arrange a community meeting last night where we could talk directly with Chief Mylette. He what I want to say about that first and foremost, and what took all of us by surprise the most, was how open he was. He answered all of our questions. He gave us more context. He went above and beyond, and I have lots of experience working with police chiefs. Those are rare qualities that you see in a police chief. So I want to thank Chief Milet for his time. I want to thank Mayor Mullet and the City Council for helping arrange that meeting. As I told him last night, my personal red flags have been turned into yellow flags. And I support the council's decision tonight, whichever way that goes. If he is appointed as police chief, he has shared his ideas and his goals for the city of Issaquah. And I understand with my experience that that's going to take all of us to implement those ideas. I think those ideas are great ideas, and I think they're very progressive for any police department. And I hope that we all, as a community and a city, can rise to the challenge of supporting that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up.
Sandra Ryder.
So I also live in Taos with my wife. Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for arranging the community meeting with Chief Millet. We definitely had some concerns going into it, and like she said, we've both worked with a lot of chief of polices, multiple people who are chief of police. I don't know how to say it. Anyways, and we did notice just how open he was. He wasn't defensive. I told him myself, I said, you know, if someone asked me, hey, do you want to go into a room where everyone's going to talk about the worst day you've ever had on the job and, you know, criticize your work, do you want to do that? I'd be like, no, I'm good, thank you, but no. And he was willing to do that. He was willing to meet with us. He didn't know what he was walking into. And we were just taken aback by just his openness, his honesty. So yes, I will say for myself, I would be a yes for him. I do think he is an excellent person, and we look forward to helping his vision come to fruition in Issaquah. And also, yes for park bonds, yes for Opportunity Center.
Thank you very much. We might start paying you to come to more meetings and just keep testifying. Madam Clerk.
No one further is signed up, and we don't have anyone from the public with us online at this time.
Oh, hey, this is your chance. Oh, you're okay. Come on up. Just share your name, your relationship with the city, and off you go.
I'm Terry Fulton. I have lived in Issaquah for 41 years, seen many, many changes, and I am here to support the Parks Bond. I'm representing the pickleball community, and I have many friends who are also tennis players, and I can say, actually, they happen to be one of my clients today. I was talking to them, and she is a tennis player, and I was saying, oh, do you play at Tibbetts? And she goes, oh, no, the pickleball players have overtaken it. And that's sort of like, that's not exactly the case. And then she goes, yeah, well, the pickleball players play on the first court where the backboard is. We can't even go there and hit balls on the backboard. So I strongly support the bond that would put more pickleball courts up in Central Park. I know, everyone in the pickleball community would really appreciate that. It's, tough in the summer. We play outside in the winter. We're playing in at the community center, and, we love that. And anyway, I just wanted to come here and say I think it's very important that we are able to fund something like that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So, Mark, June 29th, 2026 is the day everyone discovered there's a pickleball lobby in Issaquah, and it's alive and well. And is there anybody else wishing to comment? It is totally, oh, come on up. The light's been left on for you.
Steve Barrera, Old Town Issaquah, about 18 years. This is what they call just-in-time training or inventory, so flash back to work. So leaving that aside, I guess I want to talk on 4 topics tonight, share with you thoughts that I had. I'm going to briefly pull up my cell phone, not because I'm watching for the phone, but I kind of remind myself to keep on track with what we're talking about. So basically, I'll probably forget some more what I'm going to say, but I want to be respectful of your time. The first on the park bond proposal, thanks for Director Watling for meeting with me. First thing is that I'm strongly opposed because I don't think we've had a chance to define what our park priorities are. We're going to have what a 20 some odd $1 million chance at this. We haven't really identified what our priorities are strong enough as community-wide. We're pushing this to go through before we've had time to identify what those priorities are. That said, I want to be transparent. I'm a big opponent of the dog park in any form. It kind of got wedged in, but I want to be transparent and about that in front. I just think we're rushing this, and to go now, we're not going to get the priorities we need. We're going to end up with some facilities that are going to need to be replaced or maintained before we have a chance to define those. So I'd ask you to wait until we define that better. That said, I guess that's my big concern with it. We haven't taken the time to identify what those priorities are. I admit I'm not a fan of some of I'm a fan of the Eck House. I also don't know that I see that we're in a dire need for more hiking trails in Issaquah when we're already well known for that. There's just too many questions. I'm sorry, I do have to look at my cell phone to remind myself of the other things I wanted to talk about. I hate the dead silence. I guess I also don't know about the playfield facilities. I don't know that we are gearing up towards a larger area than the city our size normally has for this type of facilities. So I tend to be inclined against the Issaquah School District and the city on interlocal agreements with park facilities. Transitory development, I like the idea, but we've just been told we're going to be back in 2050 for a park, for a transitory development train coming to Issaquah. Title 18 Land Code. I guess I don't think we've looked at this realistically enough to say what it is that we expect to get development from the train coming through. I'm getting off target a little bit. Stepbacks 15, the way I heard it explained one time is there was a proposal to change this step back from the bottom of the 5th floor to the bottom of the 6th floor. That was defeated in the PPC. I'd like to see that reinstated at the 5th floor, but more realistically, I'd like us to look at all the things we talk about. We defined a set of culture and criteria, things we wanted when we agreed to become a regional growth center. And we just seem to be setting these aside and not defining what the things are that we want. When we decided to become a regional growth center, we set some things we wanted to have maintained, and we're not defining what those are. We're just going through and changing them without understanding what we lose or why those are maintained. So I disagree with the step back, or I would set it to bottom of the 5th floor rather than the bottom of the 6th floor, as was recommended by the PPC. I'd also like to see the community area within inside each of the proposed new parking building units not decreased the minimum facilities. With that, I rambled long enough. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much, Steve. Is there anybody else here for audience comments? Looking, going once, going twice. With that, audience comments are closed. The next item of business is the consent calendar. I do not have any remarks on the consent calendar. Do any of the committee chairs or chairs as, oh, Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. Let's see, get my email up here. I just want to take a moment to speak about AB 9182, which is the Title 18 Land Use Code clarifying amendments. This item was reviewed by the Planning Development Environment Committee on June 2nd. It's essentially cleanup and clarifications that have been building up over the last year. So I wanted to clarify that this does not include any of the promoting building investment work scheduled for the next 2 years that we recently approved. That's coming later in the meeting as the first item. This is just the clarifying items, and we supported this unanimously.
All right, thank you very much. Consent calendar was distributed in advance. They'll be approved in one motion. Have payables and payroll been reviewed?
They have?
They have. They have. I see two. Does any council want to remove any items from the consent calendar? Not seeing any. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the consent calendar as presented in tonight's agenda.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. And that passes unanimously. So that takes us to the first item of regular business, which is AB 9211, the police chief appointment. And so, as we know, Chief Paul Schwann retired on June 1st of this year, and we then had a nationwide search to find a new police chief. We did have, I think it was 21 applicants apply for that job. We had 3 people come in from various locations in the country, plus 1 internal candidate, and we had a group of panels. It was community panels, it was staff panels, folks from the council, 3 council members were on the panel. We had a member from the equity board on the panel, and so everyone got a chance to interview these 4 finalists that were there that day, and then I basically took into consideration the recommendations from those various panels, and that's how we landed on Chief Steve Milet. And I would say, when I first went to the Conference of Mayors back in January, and you get a chance to ask mayors, like, what's your advice in terms of being new to this role, and it's unanimous. Every mayor says the most important hire you'll make is your chief of police. And so I think out of the gate, I took this decision very seriously to make sure that we did pick someone that we thought could represent this community. And to be honest, it was really nice to hear the comments. To go from 2 red lights to a yellow light and a green light makes me want Chief Milet to be in my passenger seat, because I seem to hit a lot of red lights every time I come to City Hall, and they seem to be red longer than I want them to be. So it's really a testament, I think, to why I do think we have a good candidate here. And with that, is there a motion? And the motion would be, I'm looking to our...
To confirm the mayor's appointment of chief of police.
So the motion is to confirm Steve Milet as Council President Marks.
I move we approve the mayor's appointment of Steve Milet as chief of police for the city of Issaquah. Confirm.
Second.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. Is there any council discussion? Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. I wanted to start out by just saying I really appreciate the public engagement on this topic. This is another one where we got quite a few emails, and there were quite a few questions on there, but it wasn't a point where people stopped with just questions. They further talked to council members, and they said, what was your perspective? And we had council members talk to other council members from Bellevue who had history with Chief Milet, and so there was a lot of due diligence on this. There are 3 things that your city council does, really, truly. One is approve a budget that spends your money based on your priorities. The second is set policies across the city. And the third is approve the hiring of our top officials. And all 3 of those are really the important areas where we're doing our due diligence and where the public's feedback is really essential. I participated on that hiring committee with 2 other council members, as I also did when we hired former Chief Paul Schwann, and I was very impressed with Chief Milet's experience, knowledge of the area, and just the way that he engaged on this interview. So I am very grateful that we have this opportunity to make this decision. You know, sometimes we go through a national hiring process and the candidates just don't bubble up to the level of what we need in Issaquah. And so it was really nice to see someone come through that did, that the hiring committees were looking at it and saying, yes, this is a really good fit. And then to have the public come through and really ask the questions and see Chief Milet respond to that and say, yes, yes, I want to meet with everybody. Yes, I want to have that engagement, really confirmed that decision for me. So I am in full support, and I appreciate that we have this opportunity.
Excellent. Deputy President Jay.
Great. Yeah, I want to echo everything that Councilmember Walsh said. I also had the opportunity to serve on the interview panel alongside representatives from the community, Council President Martz, Councilmember Walsh, and Chief Milet was the unanimous top choice of every member of our panel based on his responses. Also, you know, I will note that after he was announced as the newly appointed police chief, you know, I go to various events and everyone who I talked to from Bellevue was very excited, like, oh, I heard you have a new police chief. Who's our old police chief? And so, you know, heard a lot of positive feedback from folks in Bellevue as well. I think one thing that a lot of members of the public might not be aware of is that we operate a jail, and given our recent record here in Issaquah, including 2 overdose deaths in 2023, I believe it's really crucial that we have a police chief who genuinely cares about the well-being and every single person in our care. And based on our conversations with Chief Milet, I believe he cares and will do the work to make sure that we're, you know, living up to our values here in Issaquah. In both Bellevue and Akron, also, Chief Milet made progress in diversifying the police force to represent the communities he served. In particular, in Bellevue, one example that I think I heard from one of the council members in Bellevue that I talked to was that, you know, when there was a rise in anti-Asian hate crimes in the beginning of the pandemic, you know, he actually brought in one of the officers who was Chinese to speak, you know, to the community in Chinese. And for me, as a Chinese American, I think that's really meaningful. And so I have full faith that he'll be able to do similar work to engage the community here in Issaquah, which I think is an area where, you know, we could make some progress. I will also say, you know, there have been a lot of questions that have arisen through this process that's been raised by the community, and they do deserve to be taken seriously. And I want to give a huge kudos to Chief Milet for, you know, taking the time yesterday and for our community members on such short notice to, you know, spend 2 hours talking through all of these items. I would say, you know, my yes vote comes with an expectation that Chief Milet engages openly, acts with accountability, and demonstrates through his conduct that these concerns were heard. And I know that, you know, he's taken a good first step with that with yesterday's community meeting, but we know that we all need to continue to do the work to earn the trust of the community. And that concludes my remarks.
All right, Councilmember Adair.
Yes, so echoing the same statements, I really tried to kind of feel the weight of this decision as really being kind of the most important vote have likely made thus far, and really put a lot of thought and research and care into this. You know, I was not on the interview committee, but so once his name came up, I tried to really research, look at his background, look at the information we were provided in terms of his application, and really do my due diligence. Met with him privately also to ask a lot of the questions and some of the questions that have been brought up to us. And I felt through all of that I did feel that he was the right person for the job. You know, I was looking for someone who would really prioritize community-based policing, that would be trying to build a lot of trust with the community, with, you know, all demographics, all the people that are a part of this community. I really wanted, you know, to create a very positive, trusting relationship between the police and emphasis on the serve aspect of that role. And, you know, his answers, you know, gave me confidence that he would do that. You know, so you know, as he's said and through his meetings, I do think he has promised to bring a lot of transparency, to really work with people and meet people where they are, and that I feel he is going to work with council and the residents to really build something, you know, from the community up, really do the job and, you know, most importantly, listen to what we have to say and what we want out of this police force. So for all those reasons, I will be voting to confirm yes for his appointment.
Thank you, Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you. Largely echoing off of the comments of my colleagues here that I have been very impressed overall with Chief Milet and how he's really been able to just run head on into any questions that he's faced. The concerns from the community, I don't take those lightly, and I've been able to ask and get his context for the concerns that have come up, and I know he's addressed those himself as well. And I think it just goes to the fact that one of the other council members mentioned how just the steward of trust that the police chief is, and based off of the decision-making skills, your leadership I've seen, and just your brief weekend here, I'm very encouraged by that, and I think, I know I'll keep watching to see how that continues, should you be confirmed, and based off of what I've seen from your character this weekend, I'm a yes.
Chief Milet, you should know. Councilmember Boyd's mom was a police officer, and Councilmember Adair's stepfather was a police officer in Texas, actually, for Council President Marks.
Thank you. So this is an extraordinarily important appointment. Public safety has become, in recent years, such a complicated topic around our nation, and I'm from Minneapolis, so I've seen it, horribly impact otherwise great places to live, where communities had a hard time defining how they needed their public safety system to operate. So this subject of the officer-involved shooting in Akron came up in the interview panel, and one of the things that impressed me about Steve was that he was real honest about the process that they went through, the challenges that he had with his police force. One of the pieces of information that people didn't necessarily know until they got involved in the conversation over the last couple of weeks is when you talk about the importance of public safety, having when he was chief there in Akron, he got the Ohio Attorney General's Bureau of Criminal Investigation involved in that officer-involved shooting. That's a standard of public safety that we have in Washington, and it was an element of understanding that if he was going to become our chief, that he would understand how we view public safety in this community. So it was really, really important to me. He also talked about his engagement with communities of color during that time, which was so traumatic for the folks of Akron, and so it really, really impressed me that he would keep our communities of color and our historically underrepresented communities here in Issaquah safe. So it made me very positive about him as an applicant, and I'll be excited to support his confirmation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Nichols.
Thank you. Before I say anything else, I want to just thank everybody who put the time and effort into this process. I know this is a lot of work from the staff. Managing a long executive search like this takes a lot of time, and it needs to be done very carefully. Also, my fellow council members for all the seriousness that they've brought into it, and the concerns from the community and the comments from the community. I think hiring is the most consequential decision any organization makes, and it really is worth getting right. And I'm really grateful for the care everybody has put into getting it right. I will admit I was very concerned about a number of things I read both in the press that were emailed to us and that members of the public have brought before us. After listening to Chief Milet extensively, though, including 2 hours yesterday that I joined with him to listen on my part, as he spent his Sunday talking with community members who did not pull punches on any of those topics, I will say I am greatly reassured. I particularly look forward to seeing him implement the community engagement efforts he's described. We have many different groups within Issaquah, some of whom are very comfortable writing in, speaking up, and advocating for both themselves and others. We also have many communities that demonstrably do not. We never hear from them. I was impressed with the efforts he led in Bellevue to bring in diverse members of his community and give them a voice. He bragged that he has seen crime numbers go up after instituting these in the past, not because crime has increased, but because the residents are comfortable reporting them. I look forward to seeing that same in Issaquah and hope we can all be good partners in making everyone in our community feel the safety they deserve. So I will be a yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Joe.
Thank you. I also will be a yes this evening. Just want to let the community know my perspective a little bit. As many of you know, I have served as the pro tem judge here in the Issaquah District Court. Used to be here. It's now across town, but served on the bench here. I also served as a prosecuting attorney for 4 East Side cities for over 10 years. So I bring that perspective to this process along the way, and it was interesting because I wasn't scheduled to meet with Steve until Sunday, but on Friday I was having breakfast at a local restaurant, and he happened to be there with our city administrator, and so I sat down with him and started peppering him with questions. I was quite impressed that he was able to take my impromptu light cross-examination in stride and answer questions to my full reassurance and the full ability to address my concerns there. One of the things that I was impressed with was again the Bellevue process, where he brought in Alaric Bien from the Asian community and other leaders in minority communities to work on community policing. And one of the last questions I asked him was that I know that it was from a different time, but we used to have police officers that came to our Rotary Club meetings and our Kiwanis meetings and showed up at the different events. And he said, I really want to reinstitute that because community policing is so important to me. Our officers and our police department doesn't know what's happening in our community unless we're part of the community and involved with the community. And that really impressed me as well, because it's policing on one hand, but it's community building on the other. And I think Steve's going to bring both aspects of that to this job, and I fully support his confirmation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's no further discussion, the motion for the council is to confirm the mayor's appointment of Stephen Milet as police chief of the city of Issaquah effective July 16, 2026. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And that passes unanimously. So please join me in welcoming Chief Milet. And Chief Milet, if you want to meet me up here, you can make a few remarks.
Good evening, Mayor Mullet, members of council, Mr. Bobkowitz. I'm humbled. I truly, truly am. I feel a tremendous amount of pride. I thank you for your confidence and your support. I promise you the things that I say I will deliver on. What you see truly is what you get. Whatever I say comes out of my mouth is the truth as I know it to be in that moment. I am very, very excited to be joining the leadership team and leading the men and women of the Issaquah Police Department. I don't say this because of the confirmation. I remember this when I was the chief in Bellevue. You have a good police department. You truly do. And as I was driving around on Sunday morning with Officer James, and we're driving through the neighborhoods, I saw something that I hadn't seen in a very, very long time. People actually waving at the police. A dad standing there with his son, who's probably 4 years old, pointing at the police car as we're coming up and encouraging him to wave. To me, that shows me and is a testament to the relationship between the police and this community. There's always room for improvement, always. But whatever foundation of positivity that I'm inheriting, we're just going to continue to build off of. And yes, I do listen intently, and I thank the community for their questions and the opportunity to allow me to present the Paul Harvey rest of the story. And I promise you I will not let you down. I thank you very much, Mayor, for the nomination. And I can't wait to get back to the Pacific Northwest and this beautiful, beautiful community. Thank you.
I know. I think Ohio right now is 30 degrees warmer with 100% humidity. Councilmember Adair, this may only be your most important vote. I'm going to tell 2 more items when you get a vote for pickleball. So that's so Chief Milet will get to enjoy his moment of glory for at least a couple agenda items. The next is Agenda Bill 9192, Issaquah School District and City Interlocal Agreement for Joint Use and Development of Facilities, Programs, Maintenance, and Operations. And Parks Director Jeff Watling. It's all yours.
All right. Mayor, thank you so much. Good evening, council. Jeff Watling again. And thank you, Tisha, Clerk Gieser, for running the slides on both of these presentations back to back. So thanks so much. Next slide. With this item, the joint use agreement with Issaquah School District, the purpose and recommendation. The purpose is to present our recommendation, administration's recommendation, and seek your authorization for the mayor to sign this updated joint use agreement between the city and the Issaquah School District. Next slide. Oh, I do have the clicker. Next slide, Jeff. Next slide, Jeff. Turn it on, Jeff. There we go. All right. Thank you. A little levity. This slide is really to I think, trying to answer the question why. Why is a joint use agreement between two independent public agencies of value? What is the intent, really? 4 areas I want to highlight. One is the mutual interest that both of these agencies, a city and a school district, have in supporting community programs, both for education, for recreation, and athletics. A joint use agreement also recognizes that all city and school district assets are publicly owned by the residents of that community. A joint use agreement allows for a much more cost-effective way to deliver services and programs, both the school district as well as the city running programs. And lastly, the properties are made available to the other agency as a first priority after scheduling for its own programs and services have been met. So tremendous efficiencies. And as I look at the background, I think we can see that as a testament here in Issaquah. We've had a current joint use agreement, and the current joint use agreement has been in place since 2003. So we have a great history in working with the school district. We also recognized it was time to review and likely update this joint use agreement. So in April of 2024, those of you council members who were here at the time will recall we had a joint meeting between the school board and the Issaquah City Council that April. This was a topic that myself and Martin Turney presented as an opportunity to pursue a renewal. We got some great feedback, a great discussion by both council and school board that really helped to set the course for that work. So we began that in earnest in 2024 and 2025. A lot of great staff work happened. A new framework to a new draft was created. Fast forward a bit to early 2026. School district staff joined me at a park board meeting in January where we presented the framework of that draft. Park board unanimously supported moving forward with that. Later this year, in April, another joint meeting between the school board and the city council occurred. At that meeting, I unfortunately wasn't able to attend, but I know school district staff provided an update on where that agreement was at. Not on this timeline because it happened so recently, forgive me, but just last Thursday, on June 25th, I had the chance to present at the school board meeting. My presentation focused not only on the park bond renewal, but also the importance and the relationship that park bond renewal has with this joint use agreement. Very, very positive feedback from the school board on both of those items. I'm going to provide a little bit more of an update a couple slides from now under next steps. But first, just to highlight really some of the primary additions and changes to the joint use agreement, and I really put these in two pretty prominent categories. The first significant change has to do with scheduling and access. What we've done in this updated agreement is further clarify the process for scheduling and that coordination. So much of this joint use agreement and really the implementation of this joint use agreement is done very much at a frontline staff level. So it was very important in this update to clarify the process and understand how different facilities are scheduled should require a different or understanding of a different scheduling process. So we broke down different ways that that scheduling partnering would happen with gymnasiums, with fields and city parks, with the Julius Bone Pool, with Issaquah High School Performing Arts Center. Again, all important public assets, but all have a little different scheduling mechanism. So this update is really, I think modernized our approach and laid out a good framework as opposed to the 2003 plan in that regard. Another key element in addition to this joint use agreement is establishing a process for possible joint capital projects and programs, not just talking about it, but laying out in this plan a methodology for what that would look like. And that could include joint capital projects such as athletic fields, like community sports fields at elementary schools that might be in our future. Would also create a mechanism for joint capital projects around additional pool capacity or any other capital projects or programs that might come available, where the joint use agreement doesn't try and define every single one of those that might happen in the future, but it creates a process in which addendum agreements would be created for each of those capital projects that would then spell out the specifics of how is it funded, how is it being built, how is it going to be maintained, what are the roles and responsibilities of each agency within that capital project or program. So a great tool and mechanism that this joint use agreement could serve for many years to come. So some next steps. And again, forgive me, I should have updated this from last Thursday. Before I jump into these next steps, should you authorize Mayor to enter into this agreement, we also need the school board to enter into this agreement. So like any joint use agreement, we're coordinating the adoption authorization of each agency. The next school board meeting is on August 13th. The school board is scheduled to adopt and authorize this agreement that evening. At the Thursday, June 25th meeting that I attended, following my presentation, Wally and I were provided an update by the school district staff on the discussions they've had with the school board. They were very positive, very happy to report that the school board has no programmatic questions or concerns about the joint use agreement. There were a couple of more legal questions that they're running down, school board staff running down with their legal team. I've updated Rachel Turpin, our city attorney, as to those discussions. We will work through those. A lot of those legal questions had to do with some language around indemnification, as well as some language around dispute resolution. But again, more technical. What we've learned is there is tremendous support from the school board for all of the programmatic elements of the joint use agreement. So with that said, following that key next step of both agencies authorizing the joint use agreement, this fall we would jump straight into implementation and operationalizing this agreement at a staff level between both agencies, and then later this winter, should there be a potential park bond put on the ballot and should voters approve that, we would begin working this winter on entering into addendum agreements for each of those community sports field projects. So options before you tonight. As administration recommends, the first option is to approve the motion and authorize the mayor to enter into that agreement. Another option, should you not want to do that, is refer this agenda bill to Services, Safety, and Parks Committee for more discussion. Another option you would have is, if you don't support this, is not updating the joint use agreement and continuing with the 2003 joint use agreement that we have in place right now. But with that, our recommendation is that you authorize the mayor to enter into this agreement. And again, as you see the language there, provided that the parties may make revisions that not substantially change the terms of that agreement or change any of the programmatic terms if approved by the city attorney. So with that, thank you very much. I'm available for questions.
Councilmember Adair.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. So for the scheduling updates that you did, what were there? Can you explain a little bit, like maybe what some of the problems were with the current agreement in terms of that, as well as in the updated versions, did we get any like more access to things or anything that happened there?
Yeah, great questions. Yeah, I would say operationally, a couple things we recognized as challenges in the prior agreement. One, it didn't differentiate between a scheduling process for, say, the Performing Arts Center from scheduling a gym. It didn't have a mechanism in place on how to most efficiently schedule the variety of again, public assets that both we manage and the school district manages. Another reality of that 2003 agreement that we wanted to address was financial, in that the prior agreement had the city paying for half of a full-time staff person of the school district, a facility scheduler. And so through this work and through this update, we felt that was important given, again, I think the important roles that we both play in managing our own facilities, that we should no longer pay for half of a school district staff.
Fantastic. And then my other question was, will that scheduling agreement apply to the potential new captive fields that we might make, or will a new agreement need to make for those specifically?
So a new interlocal agreement wouldn't need to be made. The mechanism for those capital projects would be an addendum agreement would be created. That addendum would be an attachment to this interlocal. That addendum will spell out how those fields will be maintained and scheduled. What I shared with the school board and what I've shared with you all and the park board in prior agreements and been very clear with school district staff is it would be our goal that through, again, should a bond be approved, should we be entering into an addendum agreement with those elementary school fields, the city would be the funder of the project, we would be the maintainer, and the city would be the scheduler of those fields. And so that addendum mechanism allows those elementary school fields that the city would be investing in to be managed and scheduled differently than some of the other existing fields. I hope that helps.
Councilmember Nichols.
Thank you. Some follow-up questions on that addendum and on the scheduling piece in particular. So I'd emailed you on this before. You gave a great answer at the time. My question was basically, we have, as a city, different policies on how we allow access to our outdoor facilities in general versus many of the school facilities. A lot of the newer school facilities, their turf facilities in particular, oftentimes have access fees associated with them. And my hope was that we would be able to control this as a city and not have publicly funded fields require access fees. Scheduling for big events and sports aside, individual being able to access those fields at any time, I think is something that most of us expect out of our parks. Did that discussion proceed any further? I don't think there's anything new in this agreement as is, but you must have discussed the addendums that you'll follow up with this in more detail. And do you have any more detail that you can share on that topic?
Yeah, I believe so. If I'm following your question, pertaining to existing school district fields at the middle school or high school and how they manage them, this interlocal.
Oh, sorry. No, I don't mean that. I mean the ones that this bond will fund.
Okay.
If this bond is to fund new things, will the city be able to set its policies on public access, not for existing fields that the schools already own?
Thank you, Councilmember Nichols. Yes, the addendum agreement, the framework of this agreement as well as the addendum agreement would give us the ability to set scheduling parameters very clearly and very differently to allow public use of those elementary school community sports fields to function just as a neighborhood park would after school hours. Obviously, during school hours, it would be serving its primary purpose as a school amenity. But after school, evenings, weekends, summer hours, those community sports fields would be managed and function just like a sports field would in any one of our neighborhood or community parks.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Cho.
Thank you, Director, for all of your work on this agreement. Appreciate it. You brought up the Performing Arts Center. I had a couple of questions about that. We have supported in the past through our LTAC grants and other funding the film festival and the Nutcracker event. I have heard some challenges with scheduling with the school district in the past. Could you comment on how this agreement will help smooth that scheduling over should it be adopted?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. Amy Dukes, our arts manager, is still in the audience. Amy played a key role in framing up what that performing arts scheduling section looks like and how we want to administer it. Yes, I expect it to address some of the challenges that we saw from some prior years where it became very, very hard for community groups to access that site. So the intent of this interlocal agreement is, in many ways, the arts manager. Amy would serve as facilitator for any community groups that are interested, whether we're funding them through LTAC or through arts grants, but be that public, that city-side conduit that would work directly with school district administration, not just the arts director of the community, the Performing Arts Center, but work with district staff, setting and I don't have the scheduled dates memorized, but we were very specific in amount of time and lead time that we want to have schedules confirmed. We also recognize and put in place operationally that there are when there's large regional community events requested, there will be a large lead time that we will want and expect. And I would say even as we've been negotiating this new agreement, it's been encouraging to see at the same time we've been finalizing this, the approach the district's taken to the Performing Arts Center the last couple of months has greatly improved. And seeing the film festival there for the very first time, seeing the Nutcracker performance there in December, I think the school district has also seen the value and the benefits that an agreement like this and cooperating in public use of that will be a big benefit. So.
Okay, so if the school district approves this in August and we approve this evening, will I have your assurances that we'll have enough lead time to get those November and December events smoothed out and scheduled?
Yes, I believe Amy's already working on getting dates set for Nutcracker, and those are well underway. So,
I think the film festival may have been moved to January, right? The film festival, I think they're doing January now.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. Is there any other council discussion or questions on the interlocal? Oh, Councilmember Boyd.
A really specific question about the Eck House, and it's okay if I can send it in writing afterwards because I didn't give you a heads up. But do the renovations include any part of the landscaping on the outside? I've heard just one community member very interested in. I think there's some rose bushes maybe around it that they're interested in preserving.
I think your one agenda bill item.
Probably
ahead.
So sorry. Never mind.
Okay. But I'll hold
We're
that
gonna get
answer.
to the accounts.
I'll hold that answer.
Okay, on the interlocal agreement, if there's no further council discussion, is there a motion? Council President Martins.
Mr. Mayor, I move to authorize the mayor to enter into the updated interlocal agreement for joint use and development of facilities, programs, maintenance, and operations between the Issaquah School District and the City of Issaquah in substantially the same form as the attached agreement, Exhibit A, provided the parties may make revisions that do not substantially change the terms of the attached agreement or change the programmatic terms of the agreement if approved by the city attorney.
Second?
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Councilmember Walsh?
Thank you. I'm kind of disappointed that the addendum for the special circumstances isn't coming through at this point. I understand the special circumstances where the city might make a capital investment and how that changes scheduling priorities, because that was really what was important in going forward with the idea of going to the community and saying that, yes, we have an interlocal agreement that will substantially change and make sure that the funds that the community puts into place means that these facilities will have much more public access than the current school facilities do. So I want to put that out there. I want to make sure that that is a priority, and that I don't think the community should wait until after a park bond is potentially approved to know what the details are on that. I appreciate your assurance that everybody says that the idea is we're going to have priority for scheduling and that the public will be able to engage this, but words on paper in that case really matter. So I'm a little bit disappointed in that. That being said, I do appreciate all of the efforts to modernize this. I did read over the improvements to scheduling for the facilities that the school district currently has, and so I appreciate that. I appreciate that we are no longer paying half of the salary of a scheduler for facilities that we are not gaining access to, and that this is an improvement over the 2003 version. So I will be supporting this tonight, but I do want to hear back that we are going to have it as a priority to get that addendum pulled together so that the community knows that their investments, if they so choose, have an agreement behind them that provide them access.
And then, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but part of our challenge is the addendum for Clark is different than the addendum for IVE. It's different than the addendum at Grand Ridge because they'll use their fields for different hours after school. Is that correct? Or is that
Yeah, all three of these will be separate addendum agreements. I hear you, but I know attending the school board meeting Thursday night and presenting specifically on the framework of those community sports fields and talking directly through our expectation and hope and in hearing the positive feedback, extremely positive feedback. Thank you. I hear you. It will be a priority. And I stand with a high degree of certainty that there is high mutual support for getting this done.
Deputy President Jay.
Do you have an estimate on the timeline for getting those addendum agreements done at this point?
No, soon as possible.
But would it be before the park bond goes to the voters in November?
It would be either somewhere right in that time frame or shortly after. Again, hard to lay down a timeline when it's two agencies. I don't know what their timeline is.
Yeah, totally understandable.
Work will begin in earnest, right?
Council President Martz.
Well, I'm excited about the possibility of this agreement. I feel like at least a few times a year that folks in the community who do not understand that the city of Issaquah and the Issaquah School District are two separate governmental organizations that only share the word Issaquah. And other than that, they're completely different and with different operating models. And but yet these are the two entities of government that many folks in our community have the most interaction with, right? Like you're not out in a sailboat dodging a missile submarine or whatever, so you don't deal with the federal government all that much. So it's really important that our two governmental organizations interact in ways that benefit the community, in ways that stretch dollars best for the community, provide services best for the community. And it is not always thus. So this is an important step forward, and I hope that we will continue to find creative opportunities to leverage both our best assets and the school district's best assets going forward. Thank you.
Is the federal government trying to shoot down your boat lately?
I stay out of the way of the ballistic missile subs when I am transiting Hood Canal.
Councilmember Nichols.
On that note, I echo the excitement that Council President Martz offered on this. I would really like to see our schools and our municipality working together however we possibly can. We have the same people in many cases paying for the same types of things, and if we can reduce duplication and find ways to synergize and make everything work better, this is all great. So I really, really applaud this effort. I will use a slightly different word than Councilmember Walsh did as far as being disappointed about the addendum. I'm not disappointed per se. I think I'm more anxious. Because I think I'll express also that this is a key aspect of this agreement to go well for me. I think in this case, though, we really have to just trust that you folks will be able to negotiate this and get it done. And I don't want to get in the way of that and say that even though I'm nervous about this, I want to have that done first because I think we will just not get it at all. And I think that would be a great shame. So please, understand our anxiousness, but also appreciate our trust in you to get this signed in a way that will be maximally beneficial to all of us. And I appreciate negotiations are always hard, no matter what they are. And I imagine negotiations between two government agencies can't be any easier than any other type of negotiation I'm familiar with. So I appreciate the difficulty, and please also just, if you can, keep us updated along the way, and let us know if there's anything that we can do to help.
Councilmember Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a little nostalgic because I was on council in 2003 when we first approved this agreement, and it was with great optimism that we were going to have the opportunity to share facilities and hopefully have a scheduler in the schools that could help coordinate those activities. It's not often that in my time on council I've had an opportunity to take a piece of legislation and make it better 23 years later, so I'm quite pleased to be able to do that. I'm quite optimistic that we will be able to have better coordination with our arts groups and our groups that want to come in and use the Performing Arts Center. It's a wonderful facility, 600-seat capacity, and modern sound now, modern soundboard. The acoustics are great in there now, and we need to use it as a community asset for all the groups that want to come in and show the great depth and richness of our cultural heritage and our cultural groups here in Issaquah. So I'm quite excited to support this evening. Thank you.
For those in the audience doing math, how a young gentleman like Councilmember Joe could have been on the council in 2003. He was 12 years old at that point in time, the youngest council member in America. Okay, no further discussion. The motion for the council is to authorize the mayor to enter into the updated interlocal agreement for joint use and development of facilities, programs, maintenance, and operations between the Issaquah School District and the City of Issaquah in substantially the same form as the attached agreement, Exhibit A, provided the parties may make revisions that do not substantially change the terms of the attached agreement or change the programmatic terms of the agreement if approved by our city attorney, Rachel, who is very wise. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And that passes unanimously. Okay, we're getting into Councilmember Boyd's next question. Agenda Bill 9193, Park Bond Renewal, November General Election Ballot Item. Jeff, it's still yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello again. Still Jeff.
At least now you know how to work the clicker.
What's that? And
You're Jeff who knows how to work the clicker now.
I knew that, yes, an improved Jeff, yes. All right, thank you. Purpose and recommendation for this item is to present and to seek council authorization for a park bond renewal to go to voters on the November 3rd general election. Administration recommends that the council adopt the attached ballot ordinance placing a park bond renewal request for funding for the identified projects before Issaquah voters on the November 3rd ballot. My intent of the presentation tonight, we've talked a lot. I want to thank you, council, for a lot of the conversations that we've had over the last couple of months. They've really helped to shape. I don't intend to go over all of those items that we discussed, but trying to provide some quick background, some context, and really get into your discussion. But as to background, voter-approved park bonds have been a primary funding tool used for capital projects here in Issaquah within our parks and trail system. Issaquah's used this tool significantly, and most recently in 2006 when voters approved a $6.25 million bond measure. And then again in 2013, voters approved a $10 million park bond measure. A portion of these park bonds are retiring at the end of this year. With Mayor Mullet's leadership, he made it a priority to explore renewing these expiring, retiring park bonds to see if we want to make additional priority investments into our parks and trails that would not currently be feasible to fund right now. So thank you, Mayor Mullet, for having us explore this. In that exploration, we began a lot of work and discussion not only with council. Okay. Uh-oh. Back I go. There we go. A lot of discussions with your park board, with our park board, over 4 separate conversations we had with the park board. We really began to look foundationally at the adopted 2024 park system plan. As I've shared with you before, a lot of public engagement went into that park plan update, specifically around reinvesting into the park system. For those familiar with that 2024 park plan, one of the foundational elements of that is to identify not only priority projects, but prioritize them as near-term, mid-term, or long-term priorities. It was those near-term priorities that really became the foundation for projects that we might consider for this park bond renewal. So again, these projects did not come out of thin air. They really came out of previous community engagement and priority projects and investments that the community's identified. Along with those discussions with the park board on the May 18th park board meeting, the park board made a recommendation unanimously seeking and recommending for you council to move ahead and place this park bond renewal on the November ballot. You'll see in my staff report the specifics of that recommendation. They had a second point to that recommendation of not only proceeding with the park bond at the renewal rate, which is 8 cents per 1,000, which would not represent a funding increase for property owners. They also asked that the city continue to reactivate the pool advisory committee so that the idea, the concept, the priority of expansion of the Julius Bone Pool, though not on this ballot measure, remain a conversation with the community as we try and explore ways to fund that needed priority as well. Following the City Council retreat, the discussion we had on May 9th, you asked that we have a public meeting. We had a public meeting scheduled and followed through with that June 2nd at Pickering Barn. Again, overwhelmingly positive feedback as to the purpose of this bond renewal and also the bundle of projects. Along with that, all that community discussion and conversation with the park board, a lot of review and feedback with you, the City Council. On April 6th, we had a committee of the whole conversation. A lot of great feedback, a lot of questions you asked as that was your first real look at this. So appreciated that honest feedback from all of you. That led to a rather robust conversation at Services, Safety, and Parks on May 5th as we went through all of those questions and items that related to both financial questions, also makeup of the projects themselves, as well as size and size of the potential levy package. From that meeting on May 5th, later that week, on May 9th, we came back to the entire City Council, had another really good discussion on this potential opportunity for the bond renewal on May 9th. At that meeting, began to get, again, some good feedback and a sense of coming together from all of you. Here we are now in June. Additional community conversations, the opportunity I had to present to school board last Thursday night, specifically on the bond and more specifically the community sports field projects that are proposed. There was, again, overwhelming positivity and overwhelming support from the school board on these projects being included and, again, moving forward with that commitment of an addendum agreement. Real quickly, to the package itself, the proposed park bond renewal projects we would have for this ordinance include 10 projects, along with those 3 community sports fields at the 3 elementary schools that reside within the city of Issaquah. We're proposing the creation of 2 new trail corridors, one on Cougar Mountain and one on Squawk Mountain. These projects take immediate advantage of the acquisitions we've been so successful in the last 5 or 6 years, with the Bergsma acquisition on Cougar Mountain, creating a trail corridor that would lead right up into the regional Cougar Mountain Trail Network that King County Parks manages just outside of the city. And then equally on Squawk Mountain, 2 acquisitions that we did over the last couple of years have created a 35-acre corridor that would, for the first time, create a trail network from the valley floor up into Squawk Mountain State Park and the trail network there. Trailhead improvements at our Senator Bill Ramos Memorial Trailhead on East Sunset Way that's so importantly serves West Tiger Mountain would be a project. An Eck House restoration at Confluence Park, as I point to Councilmember Boyd and look forward to that question, is also on this. Confluence Park is such a key community park. This would provide a really, really important investment into that northeast corner of the park that really needs some definition. 2 projects at Tibbetts Valley Park are proposed. One is creating an expanded and all-inclusive playground at Tibbetts Valley Park. As well at Tibbetts Valley Park, creating our second neighborhood-sized off-leash dog area or dog park. And then last but certainly not least, to our pickleball lobby and pickleball posse out there would be some expanded courts, additional pickleball courts at Central Park, creating 8 new pickleball courts. From a funding perspective, you'll see in the ordinance these projects would be completed with bond funding that would be a maximum of $18 million. That $18 million would then be leveraged with grant revenues as well as other revenues such as park impact fees, totaling about $25 million that all of these projects represent. What that would mean to voters and to property owners would be an 8 cents per 1,000 rate. That is the rate that's retiring. The commitment would be staying at that or actually going a little bit below that as we seek to replace those retiring bonds. A map of what these 10 projects represent is really, again, a goal that you said overwhelmingly that we had from the get-go is making sure these investments have some geographic diversity within the community, which I think they accomplish. Should you adopt this ordinance tonight, Some immediate next steps that we would need to take is we would immediately be seeking applications and selection. The mayor would recommend a pro and con committee. That would come back to you for city council confirmation at the July 20th regular meeting. This is important because of the timeline. We need to, by August 4th, have those names provided to King County elections. Equally important next steps, there are some other materials that will be due there in early August to meet that November ballot. So though this request feels maybe like an end, it really represents a beginning of a lot of work ahead should we move forward. Thank you. I've certainly, again, appreciated the discussions, the questions, the feedback that we've had over the past couple of months. It's taken a lot of work to get here, and again, available for any questions. We recommend the adoption of this ballot ordinance.
I would say for folks, before we go on to questions, like the language here is what you would see on the actual ballot. There is an additional 250-word explanatory statement that is then there. That's like, has to be approved as being kind of non-biased, just the information of what's happening. And then you have your pro and con statements that would also be in the voter's guide. But I think in the actual ballot, as you're circling your bubble, would be the language you see in front of you here. Questions? Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you. I don't know if we have a process for, like, I have to buy everyone donuts if I jump the gun on an agenda item or something, but apologies. Thank you for your patience with me. Can you talk to me about the Eck House project, the preservation? It explicitly says that, and does that also include kind of the landscaping around it, or I think there's some interest in preserving the plants?
Yes, it does. I'd be curious what the specific question is, how far the landscaping is, but yes, absolutely. One of the things we want to do, and one of the goals of that restoration from the beginning, is incorporate it better into the park. So not only landscaping on the front, but also in particular how the back side of the Eck House relates to the playground and the rest of the park. This project would include some plaza-like improvements that would, again, create a cleaner, more accessible transition from the house into the park.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Adair.
And just for a clarification for, community members and stuff like that, the bond let's say the bond is approved, let's say the voters then approve it, then each project would have a level of community engagement as it actually was being teed up and being actually, and shovel ready and things like that. So there would be more community input into each of these projects as we actually got to their, start and end.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Dare. You're absolutely right. There would be a degree of community engagement as each of these projects were being designed. Yep.
Okay. Seeing no other questions for Jeff. Is there, Councilmember, is there a motion? Councilmember Adair.
Okay, here we go. A lot of language here. All right. I move to adopt ordinance number 3142, providing for the submission to the voters of the city at a special election to be held within the city on November 3rd, 2026, in conjunction with the state general election to be held on the same date, of a proposition authorizing the city to issue its general obligation bonds for the purpose of improving, constructing, reconstructing, renovating and equipping various parks and open space properties and relating capital improvements in the principal amount of no more than $18 million, provided by annual property tax levies to be made in excess of regular property tax levies, and to levy those excess property taxes.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by former Park Board member Adair, now Councilmember Adair, and seconded by Councilmember Boyd. Is there any further discussion? Deputy President Chang.
Great. Well, I just want to say how excited I am for this park bond. I moved to Issaquah because of the parks and access to trails that we have. So for me personally, it's very, very exciting to see that we are getting new trails and trailhead renovations as part of this package. And also, I think what's really great about this package is that there's something for everyone, whether you're a pickleball player, a dog owner, someone with kids who wants to play on the playground, someone with kids in the schools. Speaking of which, I think the turf fields at IVE and Clark that's the most support we've ever gotten as a city council for anything we've ever done, at least in my time on council, which hasn't been that long. But I mean, I think the total count of emails we got in support of that was like 130, which is a lot. So, you know, people in Issaquah really love our parks and really want to invest in making them even better, and so I'm really excited to support this. There's a couple other things that I just want to flag. So I think, you know, as we're thinking about remodeling the Senator Bill Ramos Memorial Trailhead, which is like pothole city right now, so totally in support of making it a lot nicer. You know, as we're also thinking about how we can increase, you know, bike connectivity through our city, I think one of the big missing gaps we have is from, you know, the Issaquah Highlands down into town. Right now, it's like you get off the trail and then you're like on the sidewalk next to the Bill Ramos Trailhead. Then that sidewalk, you know, if you keep going, there's like utility poles in the middle of the sidewalk. So it's not great. But if we can, you know, use this trailhead renovation to think about, you know, potentially can we actually have the trailhead as a way for bikes to move through and then, you know, onto, you know, neighborhood streets that could then have a really slow speed limit, which actually probably the people living there would be in favor of because they don't like having cars speeding by. You know, just thinking about how we can leverage these investments to also do other great things in our city. And, you know, the list of projects that we have on here, it's all the projects that are going to be funded by the park bond, but it's also not comprehensive of all the park projects that are in the works. There's other park projects that are being, you know, funded by our regular, you know, park funds and capital dollars. And in particular, I know Councilmember Boyd's a big fan of having a new park in North Issaquah, which currently, you know, in our park strategic plan is identified as a parks desert. So I know there's, you know, projects in the works, but they're not quite ready for the park bond, you know, this level of funding quite yet, but they're in the works, and, you know, hopefully maybe some developers will pay to do that and won't even need a taxpayer fund. So all in all, very, very excited about this park bond and all of the different investments it's going to make in Issaquah, and I'm excited to pay, you know, a little bit more in property taxes every year to support that. So thank you.
Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah, not a problem. I was just collecting my thoughts. You know, I don't have much to add really in that. Obviously, like, you know, as Parks Board member, I've been very excited about this. I'm really excited to be approving this and getting these projects up and running, provided the voters agree to it, obviously. And just wanted to, once again, you know, commend the Parks Department, Jeff, and everyone in there for all the work that goes into this, as well as all the continued work you do on parks and developing these plans, and will continue to do to actually get them made. I have, you know, I tried to stay really involved with this. You know, I went to the parks open house that was on this, and then when we had our time at the farmers market, a lot of people have talked to me about it, and I've seen a lot of positive response to this, and it just goes to show how important the parks are to this city and our identity. And I just love that we have found a way to, you know, stick with existing dollars, not affect their taxes, but still give people more. And I really look forward to this and hope the vote is successful and that we get to see all of these. So again, thank you for all your hard work, and I'm excited for this.
Councilmember Adair's kids have not only been to Sound Transit Board meetings, but also Park Board open house meetings. They are getting full exposure to civic government. Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. I'm probably in the minority tonight, but I'm going to be voting no on this. And it's not because I believe these projects are bad options. I think these are fantastic projects. I think they've been vetted through our park planning and all of these things. But ultimately, because I have to evaluate this like the voters will, not as a renewal to continue certain services, but as a property tax when money is tight. And further, that's the way that I look at our own budget, evaluating where we are most in need. And I think we should only go to the voters for financial support of those types of things, which in my mind is things like operations and for services that we provide on a very, very tight budget, things like public safety, fire, human services. And so while I very much appreciate all of these capital projects and would love to have the money to do so, I think we have higher needs tonight as we are evaluating things. I recognize that many of my fellow council members have not gone through a budget cycle and have not seen really truly how tight those situations of operations can get. And so if we are going to go to the voters, I think those are the areas that I would prefer to put the funding in. So I will be voting no, but I appreciate, if this goes through, the ability to create those projects for the residents.
Councilmember Nichols.
Thank you. So once again, I think this is a fantastic plan that's been put together remarkably well for the amount of time that you had to put it together. So I greatly appreciate that. It cannot have been easy. So thank you for getting these options together for us to evaluate and understand and start talking to the public about. I will be a yes on this. I think it's a very good opportunity for our community to enhance some of the things that we all love the best about our community. My family moved to Issaquah for a bunch of reasons, but two of the top ones were both our schools and our parks. This is a nice way to combine supporting both of those into the same effort with a good part of that funding. And it has lots of other great great additions in there as well. I'm personally very comfortable going to the voters and asking for the funding to do this. I think that the residents of Issaquah love our parks. They love the amenities that they provide, and that they will be comfortable with this as funding that they will help support. I also recognize that we'll have many difficult budget conversations in the future, and I appreciate Councilmember Walsh's perspective there. I think that we will have to make lots of choices at that time, and I'm also comfortable asking the voters to pay for and asking the voters to fund the services that they need, and I think we're going to have to do that, and I'm well aware of that those will be continuing conversations that we will have. So once again, in summary, I am very much in support of this. I think that this is something that the voters of Issaquah will approve and that they will support, and that these will be projects that we will all love, and that they will also give us an opportunity to flex our muscles as a government that can build cool things quickly, and show the voters that when they approve funds like this, we will get things done on time within budget, and that they can trust us to continue to deliver great things for the city.
Thank you. Council President Martins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to commend the staff. This process began a number of months ago, and staff took Parks Board input, services, safety in parks, the strategic plan, further feedback from this body, and crafted it all into something that really makes the most, if approved by the voters, will make the most of our dollars. This is a replacement bond. So for members of the public, what that means is that the effort is to have the monies basically replace the bonds that are expiring. I think that's important. This doesn't represent a substantial new impact on the voters. Really, what it is showing this Parks Department is really, really good at maintaining good parks facilities. The public tells us time and time again that not only are parks important, but the city does a good job with parks. I wish we could say that all the issues that are important to the public, that we do as well on those issues as we do on parks issues. Our life would be a lot easier if that were the case, but it's not. But we really do a good job with these bond monies that come in historically, and I believe we'll continue to do that if the public supports this bond. So I'm very much in support of this evening. Thank you.
Councilmember Joe.
Thank you. I was in Confluence Park this weekend taking a slow jog, and passed through Margaret's Meadow. And my son took a hike on Margaret's Way on Sunday. And for those of you that don't know who Margaret was, it was Margaret McLeod. And she was a person that did a tremendous job getting grants for our parks. Many of the hills that we have today were preserved because of Margaret. And the parks and open space that we have can be attributed to all the hard work that she did. I was on council in 2006 when we first approved the bond that we're thinking about renewing now. And the money that we put away over all those years came through as purchases of property that helped preserve our forested hillsides, that helped preserve open space for us. The Parks Department, with Margaret's legacy, does a fantastic job leveraging the dollars that we put out through these bond issuances and leveraging them to make those dollars punch far above their weight and get Issaquah preservation of land facilities with using that money to leverage our ability to get things done with the Sierra Club or the county or the arts organizations, whatever it might be. When we come to the table with money, because we put the money away through this bond issuance, it makes our proposals be more competitive on that scale when we're competing against everyone else for other funding and grants. This bond, from my point of view, is an investment, a continued investment by the citizens of Issaquah to say we believe in our parks. We're going to put this bond money aside and we're going to rely on our Parks Department through the long history of leveraging these funds to make these funds go farther than they should and to allow Issaquah to punch far above their weight to get open space and park amenities for their citizens. So I'm fully in support of this, and I appreciate all the hard work that's been done. And I think Margaret would be happy as she's looking down from heaven. Thanks.
I was not aware we'd have to get halfway through our agenda before we hit an item that Councilmember Joe had not been part of 20-plus years ago. Councilmember Boyd.
I'm very excited to be in favor of this, and that wasn't always necessarily the case. When I very first was appointed, I was concerned at not seeing anything in North Issaquah when it was identified, throughout the Parks Plan, and after I've had conversations with you, Director Watling, and just, given the amount of time, right, I'm assured that, as Councilmember Jang had said earlier, that, we can do things in concurrence with this, and the amount of projects that are identified for, no cost increase, should the voters pass this, it was really great to be able to tell folks that at the farmers market when they were looking at the maps, and I was able to show just how spread across the city things are. And so really appreciate all the great work that you've done on this in a short amount of time, and looking forward to continuing to, bang on my little pot and pan about North Issaquah in conjunctions with this. And thank you so much for your work. Can I also add a personal thank you for I know at Pothole City, the Ramos Memorial Trailhead, but that trailhead now has memorial in the word for it. And so for someone he was my boss and mentor, just the care that's going into that site for practical purposes, right, for the users of it, but also for me as someone who views that effectively as a memorial. I'm really excited for the transformation that'll see. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Seeing no further discussion, the motion for the council is adopt ordinance number 3142, providing for submission of the voters of the city at a special election to be held within the city on November 3rd, 2026, in conjunction with the state general election to be held on the same date of a proposition authorizing the city to issue its general obligation bonds for the purpose of improving, constructing, reconstructing, renovating, and equipping various parks and open space properties, related capital improvements, and the principal amount of no more than $18 million payable by annual property tax levies to be made in excess of regular property tax levies to levy those excess property taxes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no.
No.
Okay, and that passes 6-1 with Councilmember Walsh voting no, which now moves us on to the fourth agenda bill item, which brings our departing Deputy City Administrator to the council chambers because it's so important to her. So Agenda Bill 9212, Transit Area Development Opportunity Center Purchase and Sale Agreement. We'll have Deputy City Administrator Andrea Snyder. And what is your official last day of the City of Issaquah tomorrow, or?
It's Wednesday, July 1st is my official last day.
Okay, there you go, Wednesday, July 1st. And then I think Jillian's also going to be pinch hitting. And
well, more than pinch hitting. So I invite Jillian to come up so you can set up the PowerPoint. I know that takes some time. And while she's doing that, I just wanted to give some opening remarks for this very big item before council. I am pleased to be here tonight to provide some introductory remarks. This will be the last time before you as representative of the Issaquah administration, so don't worry, I'm not going to make any other surprise appearances. But just wanted to introduce this item, and our guest tonight really marks kind of a change in this project. The past many meetings we've had on the TOD-OC, we have focused a lot on the TOD portion of the transportation or transit-oriented development portion, which is the housing and the whole development. I am pleased to let you know that the permits have been issued for the first housing project on that site. And so that work is underway. Now we're going to shift gears and talk more about the Opportunity Center, the OC part of that acronym. And that's something that we haven't always talked much about in the council chambers. And that's really where the bulk of the work with council is going to be moving forward. And also, it represents kind of a changing of the guard. So as you know, I am leaving. This is my last city council meeting, as I said. Also, we have Dan Landis with us tonight, who is been the project manager for this project since the very beginning. Dan Landis with King County Housing Authority. Dan is going to be retiring really tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow. And he has been working on this project tirelessly on King County Housing Authority's behalf since the city issued the RFP back in 2017. So wanted to acknowledge Dan and all of the work that he has done to make this project happen, as it's been many years of problem solving and commitment, and KCHA didn't pull out despite all of the complications and how much this project has taken in terms of staff time and also just investment. So wanted to acknowledge Dan. Also with us tonight is Nate, who is the project manager moving forward for the TOD and the OC in terms of we are looking at this condominium unit within the greater development of the project. So wanted to also, as we talk about the changing of the guard, really introduce Jillian Straub, who is our management analyst. You've seen her before, but she is the day-to-day project manager on behalf of the city. And so not quite the pinch hitter. She is the subject matter expert and is going to be handling the presentation tonight. She is absolutely the expert who knows everything about this project, the tenants, all the process that we've been through over the past couple of years. Jillian has all of those details and will be managing the project for the Opportunity Center moving forward. So with that, Jillian, take it away.
And Dan, I apologize if we expedited your retirement by 3 or 4 years. We know this project has not been easy. Jillian.
Thank you for that introduction. Long awaited, I think, is a good way to describe the discussion we're going to have tonight. So, like Andrea mentioned, we're here tonight to discuss the purchase and sale agreement of the Opportunity Center, as well as the condo agreements that travel with it. So we're seeking council approval on purchasing the Opportunity Center, the funding used to make that purchase, as well as authorizing the mayor for some decisions that may or may not be needed as we work through the purchase over the next year and a half or so, as well as feedback on those condo agreements tonight. So I'm not going to read through all of the recommendations here because we're going to spend a lot of time discussing them tonight. I'll just note that the first recommendation is to purchase the Opportunity Center from KCHA and designate that funding. The next 3 agreements again relate to the authorizations for the mayor that may be needed in the future. So let's talk a little bit about what the Opportunity Center is. So there's a diagram on the right of your screen. This is the lot that's east of the transit center on the valley floor. On the north side, there's going to be that affordable housing development. On the ground floor, the city would own a 10,000 square foot commercial condo, 10,438 square feet if you want to be particular. There will also be Leo House units in this building, and it'll be affordable housing above it. The KCHA will own the land and is developing the site. Per the 2022 ILA, they're providing the shell of the commercial condo shell for the Opportunity Center at cost to the city rather than market rate. The city has long designated that there will be the provision of sliding scale or public behavioral health, dental health, or medical health services out of this space, and that the city would seek tenants and offer below market rate rents to ensure that these services were provided in the community. Like has already been mentioned, this project has been underway for a very long time, so I'll just hit a couple of the highlights that have brought us here today. So in 2016, the city issued the RFP to redevelop the TOD site. At the time, the city did not own the land, but they had a very clear vision for mixed use, affordable and market rate housing, as well as the provision of these human services or behavioral health services on the site. In 2017, the city entered into or selected KCHA and Spectrum to develop the site for affordable and market rate housing. That their proposals included the provision of the Opportunity Center at that time. In 2018, City Council directed the administration to find behavioral health, dental, or medical health services providers, and the city selected Valley City's Behavioral Health as well as Health Point to provide behavioral health and dental health services in the site, or in the Opportunity Center. In 2019, the city was awarded a direct appropriation of $3 million under the state's behavioral health program. And then in 2022, a lot of work in the interim came to a head. So first, there was an interlocal agreement with KCHA for a Tibbetts Valley Park lease to relocate a cell tower that was on the site. It's in this ILA that it's designated that KCHA would provide the Opportunity Center to the city at cost. This is also the year when KCHA secured land control. Additionally, Spectrum, the market rate developer, dropped out of the partnership at this time. In 2024, KCHA began design. And in the subsequent year, the cell tower was removed from the site. The city sought reappropriation of the $3 million to a more flexible state program from the behavioral health program, and thanks to our legislative delegation, that was awarded. Our health services providers also dropped out of the partnership at the time. They'd been on board for 7 or 8 years at this point, and the environment around behavioral health provision, public behavioral health provision, had changed dramatically in that time, considering the federal announcements that were made regarding Medicaid reimbursements for public behavioral health services that were going to take effect in the 28-29 timeframe. So the administration came to the Services, Safety, and Parks Committee as well as the council for direction on how to proceed with the Opportunity Center, knowing that we didn't have those health services partners on board anymore. The council and committee both gave direction that we should proceed with the acquisition of the Opportunity Center. So KCHA and the administration have been working over the better part of the last year on that purchase and sale agreement and the condo agreements that are in front of you tonight. So let's talk a little bit about why this is a good investment of city funds and why it's been a priority for so long. The 2017 Community Needs Assessment noted that mental health distress across age groups was a prime concern in Issaquah, and that there was no public behavioral health services for adults. In 2026, that gap remains. There are still no public behavioral health services for adults. So this has been a longstanding community need originating with the Human Services Campus idea, and it was enshrined in the RFP for selecting our developers in 2016 and in selecting the service providers in 2018. So it's been a longstanding community priority given both the need and the gap that exists in Issaquah. Because our health services providers dropped out in 2025, the administration brought a couple of options to the Services, Safety, and Parks, and later the council. We brought options that included pursuing different models for service provision, something like the Together Center, where we have quite a few tenants in the opportunity space, rather than the 1 or 2 that we had previously been seeking. Other uses for the opportunity space, like transitional housing, or not purchasing the Opportunity Center. At that time, where the project was at in design, would have been a good time for KCHA to pivot without losing time or money on the design and keeping their overall schedule. So that's why we had offered those options to Services, Safety, and Parks, and then to the City Council. City Council gave unanimous direction in September of 2025 to proceed with the acquisition of the Opportunity Center. So with that, let's talk about the purchase and sale agreement. So there are quite a few folks who are kind of involved in this, so I just want to kind of quickly lay out who all the agreements are between. The city is purchasing the condominium from Trailhead Apartments, LLLP. KCHA is the general partner of Trailhead Apartments, and they are here tonight in case you want to hear more about that, because that's really their purview to explain. There are also the condo agreements, the declaration, articles, and bylaws that travel with the purchase. Because we're purchasing a condo that has not yet been built, but we will have to establish what our working relationship is with the other unit owners, the agreements for governing that relationship are attached to the purchase and sale agreement. They will be entered into by Trailhead Apartments and the Trailhead Plaza condominium, of which the city would be one of the owners. So those terms have been negotiated with each of the unit's owners, the city and Leo House, and they're necessary to purchase the Opportunity Center condo. So the initial purchase price for the Opportunity Center condo, the unfinished shell, is $7,536,237. This is an initial purchase price because it has not yet been constructed. The way this agreement will work is that in 2027, when the construction is finished and we're at construction closing, the city would pay the final purchase price minus the money put down in 2026 for the earnest money payment, or 5% of the initial purchase price. There are a lot of provisions for what happens if the purchase price increases that we're going to talk about tonight. And the first one I want to note is that additional costs of $376,812, or 5% of the initial purchase price, those costs are the city's responsibility. Additional costs beyond that are split evenly between the city and the seller. I also want to note that the purchase price includes a fair bit of contingency. There's a $500,000 contingency built in as a line item to the budget in Exhibit B of the PSA. There's also contingency that both Walsh, the construction manager, and KCHA are carrying, which reduces the likelihood of us needing to go above the purchase price as we work through this agreement. I'll also note that what we're getting for this purchase is the 10,000 square foot condo, as well as 38 dedicated parking spaces on the ground floor of the parking structure to support our tenants and their clients. So when we received the initial purchase price, we compared it to properties in the area to make sure that this was a good use of city funds. So we compared it to medical office space sold in the last 2 years, that same kind of space for sale generally in the east side, and that kind of space for sale currently in Issaquah. The price per square foot for the Opportunity Center shell is $722. The price per square foot for spaces sold in the last 2 years in those categories or currently for sale is $618 to $664 on average. I'll note that this is an imperfect comparison for a couple of reasons. One, we're getting new build construction. We are also getting transit-oriented development with easy access to the services that we would provide, and the fact that this development is mixed use. The average age of the properties we compared this to is about 50 years. Not all of them had renovations, but if they did, those renovations were about 20 years ago. So just to compare a little bit to the kinds of properties available elsewhere. We also wanted to see how this property compared to other properties available in Issaquah if we wanted to locate the Opportunity Center outside of this project. And realistically, there hasn't been anything sold in Issaquah recently that's in the 8,000 to 12,000 square foot range, which is about what we need, or within a half mile of transit, which is necessary for us to use our state grant. I'll also note that the city is in the unique position of having recently bought a city hall, and that CBRE had estimated that the price per square foot of that office space was going to be about $725 in Issaquah, and we'd have to do tenant improvements to the space. So this is kind of well within what we would expect to pay. I'll quickly note about the tenant improvements, while they're not subject to the PSA tonight, that they would be planned for after construction of the building completes in 2027. We would go in and construct the interior of the Opportunity Center. The city and our tenants would work out through our lease agreement who exactly is responsible for, for example, getting an architect on board and paying for the tenant improvements. But they would be to build out the HVAC or plumbing, drywall, and fixtures in the space. We talked with our facilities team as well as behavioral health providers in the region who do this kind of work, and they estimated that to build out medical office space would be between $225 a square foot to $300 a square foot for these kinds of improvements. Those estimates are lower if it's just behavioral health provided in the space and no dental or medical. The city has set aside funding for the acquisition and tenant improvements for the Opportunity Center for many years. There are three main buckets of funds. First, the Affordable Housing Fund. The city has designated $5 million to go towards the Opportunity Center. There are also funds set aside, about $1 million in the mitigation fund from the Talus Development Agreement, fee in lieu, as well as the Human Services Campus. And that's about $1 million to be used for affordable housing or human services. We also have a $3 million direct appropriation in the local community program from the state. I'll note here that a requirement of that is that we locate this facility in a way that has transit access, which is why that's so important. And that this funding technically expires at the end of the biennium, June 30th, 2027. We anticipate being able to roll over till 2029, and speaking with our program manager at Commerce, so that we would receive reimbursement after the acquisition in early 2028. I'm happy to answer more questions about that. Because the initial purchase price for the Opportunity Center is $7.5 million, we propose putting down an earnest money payment from the mitigation funds here in July of 2026, and then finishing the payment with the construction closing in late 2027, using the remainder of the mitigation fund set aside, the Affordable Housing Fund set aside, as well as an additional $1.5 million-ish of affordable housing funds that would need to be set aside to complete the purchase. The Affordable Housing Fund would be, sorry. There we go. So in addition to the $5 million set aside, the administration is proposing setting aside an additional $2.5 million from the Affordable Housing Fund to cover the initial purchase price, if there were any increases to the purchase price, but also potentially some of those tenant improvements that we might have to share with our future tenants. Finance has confirmed that the Affordable Housing Fund can support this, and the reimbursement from the state grant would go to the Affordable Housing Fund, meaning there would be sufficient fund balance to designate for other capital investments in the future. So this kind of concludes the purchase and sale agreement part of the presentation before going quickly into some of the mayor's authorizations and the condo agreements. There are some trade-offs that come with not purchasing the Opportunity Center. First, like we've discussed, it's improbable that we would find suitable space near transit. We've conducted these searches in 2025 and 2026 just to see what was out there and see if there's something else in Issaquah where we could locate the Opportunity Center. There's also no guarantee that any other space found would be less expensive to purchase and improve than this space here in the TOD building. Additionally, the Opportunity Center space that's been reserved in that building would be KCHA's to use, and they're a housing authority. It's not their business to do a commercial space. They're doing it at the city's request, and they can certainly speak more to what that space might become if it wasn't going to be the Opportunity Center, but likely something that's resident supporting. Okay, so let's talk about the mayor's authorization sought tonight. So the first is for material adverse impacts. The PSA stipulates that the seller needs written approval of changes that qualify as material adverse impacts, and the city has to respond to those changes within 10 business days. A material adverse impact is an individual or cumulative change of $376,812 or more, or any reduction in square footage to the Opportunity Center due to unforeseen circumstances. We're seeking City Council approval for the mayor to approve changes due to material adverse impacts up to a $500,000 increase in purchase price. City Council approval is required because this exceeds what's in the financial management policy. I think this is easier to visualize rather than talk through. So on your screen you have essentially what would happen at various levels of increase to purchase price. If there were individual or cumulative changes of $376,811, the seller would be responsible for approving those changes, not the mayor, not the city, and the city would bear those costs. That's the material adverse impact threshold. After that point, the city and the seller share the costs evenly. We're seeking additional mayoral authority for the next $123,189 for the mayor to be able to approve those change orders for expediency. After that point, we're at $500,000 increase in costs, and we would come to we would propose that we would come to City Council at that point to seek your approval. I again want to note that this is unlikely given the amount of contingency baked into the project, but we just wanted to be well prepared. Additionally, the city may have requests that increase the purchase price. These are not material adverse impacts. The city is solely responsible for this cost. We're seeking city council authority to have the mayor authorize increases in costs at the city's request that would have an individual or cumulative effect of less than $376,812. Okay, the condominium agreements. So there are a couple of agreements attached to the purchase and sale agreement that again govern that relationship between all the condo unit owners in the north building on the site. These agreements are between the Trailhead Plaza condominium, of which the city would be an owner, and the Trailhead Apartments group. So the documents include the articles of incorporation. They define the condo association's purpose under RCW, as well as the 5 members of the condo board. 3 of those would be representing Trailhead Apartments or KCHA. 1 of those would be a representative of the city, and 1 of those would be a representative of Leo House. There's also the declaration that describes the units, their boundaries, common elements, parking, and permitted uses, among other things. It importantly also establishes voting power because KCHA or Trailhead Apartments owns or has 94% of the overall square footage of the building. They have a majority of the voting power, so there are some elements that require a unanimous vote, like changes to, there are some actions that require a unanimous vote that include changes to common elements, adoption of the annual budget, or any changes to the governing documents. There's also mention in the agreements to a ground lease. This is a 99-year lease between Trailhead Apartments and King County Housing Authority. King County Housing Authority would own the land and lease it to Trailhead Apartments for the length of this term. It establishes ownership of the land versus the building. The city's ownership is of the condominium unit, so in 99 years, if that building were to still be standing, the land and everything on it would be conveyed back to KCHA, and the city would no longer have ownership of the building, or of the condo unit. Additionally, there are bylaws that are pretty standard governing meeting procedures and how the board can act. The final authorization we're seeking from you tonight is the appointment to the condo board. Once the condominium association is created, the city needs to appoint a board member. They're going to decide on things like signage for its tenants, budgets, things like that. We're seeking council authority for the mayor to appoint the appropriate staff member, likely a department director, once the condominium association is formed. So next steps. If the PSA is approved, the earnest money would be paid here in July of 2026. Over the next 18 months, the city would continue to pursue behavioral health, dental, and medical health tenants, conducting an RFP process to select them, and beginning the negotiations over lease agreements, as well as designing those tenant improvements. In late 2027, we would close on the purchase of the Opportunity Center, making that final payment, and then in 2028, we would receive that grant reimbursement, and tenant improvements to finish the Opportunity Center could begin. So with that, the 4 motions are in front of you tonight, and I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Okay. As you can tell, that we are in good hands as Andrea moves on to Snoqualmie. Jillian has an amazing grasp of these topics, and I realize, Councilmember Joe, you might have, when we, with John Rittenhouse, put the first $1 million aside, you actually could have been involved in that. So I might have to eat my words on that front. Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you, and thank you for the great presentation, Jillian. I am trying to understand the funding that we have set aside on this project. Obviously, right now, we're talking about the Opportunity Center. A lot of our previous conversation, as has been mentioned, was about the TOD portion of the project. And so I'm trying to remember the $5 million we set aside. I believe that was set aside, if I remember correctly from your emails, that was an allocation or a promise that was made in 2018. Is that correct?
Yeah, there is a council authorization or direction in 2018 to set aside $2.8 million for the acquisition of the Opportunity Center, an additional $2.25 million for the tenant improvements for the Opportunity Center. So all for the Opportunity Center and that $5 million.
Okay. And the Affordable Housing Fund hadn't been established at that time. So the idea that we're putting together here is there was a previous commitment to just over $5 million. And here we are saying where those revenue or where those dollars will come from. Is that correct?
That's correct. And there's been planning and allocation of that throughout the years. It's typically been held in the Affordable Housing Fund, which was previously commingled with the general fund, but it's always been held for the Opportunity Center.
Yeah, so let me ask about that, because I remember setting aside money from the Affordable Housing Fund for the TOD project. I don't remember anything specifically from the Affordable Housing Fund for the Opportunity Center.
The Affordable Housing Fund made IHIP and ARCH contributions that would have supported that did support the TOD part of the project, the part that KCHA is better posed to speak to. But then later, the $5 million previously set aside in the general fund when the Affordable Housing Fund was created, those revenues would be used for this purchase. And that's the set aside that.
So is this a new proposal then, or is, because I'm really trying to rack my brain about when that happened that we decided to use affordable housing funding for the Opportunity Center portion of things.
Given the timing, so the $5 million set aside happened in 2018. The affordable housing sales tax was authorized, I believe, in 2020. And the set aside has always been in the affordable housing side of the revenues, as long as I've been at the city. I don't know if there's any other history there that we could share, but.
Okay. I would still love to be able to track that down because I haven't been able to figure that out. But so this is moving forward on the Opportunity Center. There are also costs on the transit-oriented development side. None of that conflicts with each other, correct?
Correct. I believe the city has finished its contributions to the TOD side of the project with the last IHIP contribution and the last disbursement of ARCH funds that are obviously commingled with other cities. So there are no more disbursements to the TOD side of the project.
One exception, which is a grant that Jillian actually applied for and was successful in, which is when we waive affordable housing fees, so permit fees, development fees that we charge any other development, we waive those. The city actually has to pay a portion of those back. And so Jillian was able to get a grant to help pay for those. And that's something that we had anticipated maybe some of those funds would be used for, but she was able to secure other funding for that.
Okay. And then further talking about this funding breakdown, because the conversation is the $3 million from the state that is the direct appropriation for the local community program, as you said, is not anticipated until afterward because it's a reimbursement.
Yes.
Is there anything in this ordinance that requires us to reimburse the Affordable Housing Fund, or is that a decision that we make at a later point?
Yeah, let me pull up the motions really quick and talk about just kind of the sequencing here. So in your first motion at the very end, it says that this purchase would be funded by mitigation and affordable housing funds. We spent a lot of time talking with finance about what kind of language they would need to know to hold this as they present to you, I believe in July, about the Affordable Housing Fund, or at least throughout the budget process and their proposal for it. So this is what they needed to hold those funds. And then it's always been our understanding, if you'd like to add additional language, that the reimbursement go to the funding sources that make the purchase. I think that would be fine, but that's always been our proposal.
Okay.
Is that the Affordable Housing Fund is made as whole as it can be through the grant reimbursement.
Yeah, and maybe I will we don't have finance here, but City Administrator Bobkowitz, is there anything that we need to do to ensure that when the state reimburses us, that the those dollars go back to the Affordable Housing Fund that it was taken from, in addition to what the language here is in the proposed motion.
That is the intent. I'll look at the city attorney. That could be included in this motion or a subsequent motion if the council desired. To the current motion?
No, so during the grant contracting process, it would come back before council.
Okay.
Okay, my concern there is that we are taking money from a dedicated fund without anything that necessarily requires us to put the money back.
I think our understanding is we can't accept that $3 million grant. We have to come back to council. And so we're going to put it back in the housing fund. I mean, the housing fund will have $3.5 to $4 million. We have to dip into a little of it, I think, to complete the final tranche. But the second the purchase closes, we get the $3 million, and the housing fund is made whole. And I feel like I agree with the city attorney. I think when we actually accept that $3 million, council will, I mean, we're going to put it back in the housing fund, but if we want to make that part of the ordinance of where it goes, that's really easy to do, I think. When we
Okay,
actually
but
accept
the
it.
appropriate time for that would be when we accept the grant dollars?
You can do it tonight, too.
Okay. Okay, I'll save that for my comments, but that was, yeah, that is one of my concern areas there. Thank you.
Councilmember Nichols?
Thank you. I'm trying to make the math work on a different slide. Can you go to, how do I describe this? Okay, the title is Additional Affordable Housing Set Aside. Yeah, right there, okay. So the 2.5 million, where is, I can't quite trace where that breaks down otherwise. On the slide before that, it says 1.4 million is needed as an additional set aside. And I don't see another $1 million making that up elsewhere. So maybe I can make this a clearer question. Where does that $2.5 million come from? And is it distinct from the 1.4 million on the previous slide?
The $2.5 million in additional affordable housing funding that we are seeking that you designate for the purchase of the Opportunity Center is really just to be prudent in planning. So this is in case the purchase price increases above the initial purchase price that we have from KCHA of $7.5 million here today. So that's the additional 1.4 to meet that purchase price and an additional $1 million in case the purchase price were to increase. We also know we have some amount of tenant improvement subject to the lease agreements with our tenants, and all of that to make. So this could provide funding for that as well.
Okay.
But its primary purpose is to ensure that we can complete the purchase of the Opportunity Center.
Let me try to restate that to see if I got it. So we need 1.4. You believe we need 1.4.
I know that we need 1.4.
We know we need 1.4 of set aside. The 2.5 number is adding another $1 million of contingency onto that. Okay.
But I would say $500,000 is contingency, the other $500,000 is tenant improvement dollars.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So, yeah. So you have that extra $500,000 just in case it went all the way up to $8 million. But we also know we're expecting $2 to $3 million of tenant improvements. We have no idea, based on the tenants, if we're responsible for 20% of that or 80% of that. We think at a minimum we're responsible for 20% of the tenant improvement, so that $500,000 lets you at least start on some of the tenant improvements right away as we're talking to future tenants.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Deputy President Jang.
I guess you just answered my first question, which was what city account would the tenant improvement funding come out of? So you're saying it would come out of the Affordable Housing Fund?
Yeah, that's our plan. City Council, we could bring a different proposal if they were to exceed a certain amount.
Okay. And this, just out of curiosity, I'm curious how the breakdown in cost for the Opportunity Center is calculated, given that it's part of a larger building. Like, are we prorating like a share of the foundation and roof, or what's the breakdown?
Yeah, I think actually I'd like to turn that over to KCHA because they can give you a more detailed explanation than I can.
There you go. One day to go to retirement and get put to work.
So Dan Landis, King County Housing Authority. We asked our contractor to look in specifically what costs are properly allocated to the Opportunity Center based on it's a different kind of space. It's not finished space. It has a higher proration of parking than the other rest of the building does. So it's all of the costs are based on what the contractor has told us, and we've had a lot of back and forth to make sure that they got it right. But it's based on the square footage. Obviously, our square footage cost is going to be higher because you have more parking, but for the actual space itself, your space won't be finished. Our space will be finished. So all of that's accounted for. We're not prorating the entire cost. We asked the contractor to actually break it down.
Great, thank you. Okay, and one last question. So I remember when we had approved, or I think back in July or September of last year, where we talked about purchasing the Opportunity Center, there was some talk about do we want to have one tenant or do we want to have a mixture of different tenants? So I'm curious what the current status is on finding tenants for the Opportunity Center space.
Yeah, since getting council direction, the administration reached out to a lot of the federally qualified health centers and other kind of larger providers in the Puget Sound region to make them aware of this opportunity. We then conducted a letters of interest process working with the Human Services team here in Issaquah to talk with providers who are already providing these services in our community. And we left it pretty open-ended. It was basically a questionnaire that was basically how much space do you want? What kind of services would you like to provide? We got a few potential tenants from that process. We also have then since worked with the Department of Community and Human Services at King County to advertise this space as well, and have gotten a little bit more interest and are currently in talks with 2 to 3 different providers this week. So.
And Julie and I's coffee tomorrow morning is with Snoqualmie Tribe at 8:30. So we are going out to Snoqualmie Tribe because they're a potential partner. Amy Winston is from UW Dental as a potential partner on affordable dental access. And that meeting is next week. So yeah, we're actively pursuing people to fill the space. Council Member Adair.
For the mayor authorization of the 376 to 500,000, it's noted in here that if there is a change that increases by more than that, you have to return to city council. What is the timeline of these potential changes? What would that process be if we don't have a meeting within that 10 business days, like an emergency session, or how we do it? Because obviously this would be a big change, and they could just do it without our approval. So.
Dan or Nate, you want to come back up?
I'm happy to,
or Jillian,
if that's okay, to take the first part of it. The PSA stipulates that we have to provide a response within 10 business days. So we'd have to schedule a special council meeting to have the discussion and provide a decision. And I think maybe that timing was chosen to not hold up the project on the basis of those change orders more than 2 weeks. But if I got that wrong, please correct me. Okay.
And I think part of the comfort level here is if you add up the contingencies between the 2 separate buckets, they're already in that $7.5 million price. You have $700,000 to $900,000 of contingencies. If everything went perfectly according to plan, this would actually come into less than $7.5 million. So things have to go wrong to get to $7.5 million is sort of how I'm thinking about it. And then they have to go substantially sort of sideways to get to the extra $500,000. Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, toward that idea, we should be able to watch our costs, and if we started to get toward these areas, we could make an adjustment so that we didn't have to face a period when we had a 10-day special session or something like that. But this gives the authority within a smaller scope, but which we think is appropriate, correct? Yeah. Okay.
I believe that Dan has something he'd like to share.
If I could just add to this, so our interests are very aligned on this. Our costs are about 16 times what yours are, and if your costs are going up, our costs are going up 16 times that. And so I think we're going to manage this really carefully. We're confident that our contingencies are more than we will need before anything before the purchase price would ever change. And your space is also on the ground floor, so it will be early on in the project where all of the opportunities for your cost to drastically increase would happen. We'll continue to have risk as we start building above the first floor for ours, but that won't impact you anymore. So I think there will be lots of time to figure things out if we hit that kind of crisis, but it will be a much bigger deal for our or much more of an existential crisis for the project from our standpoint, just because we would be bearing a huge cost.
You could be retired on a beach in Jamaica then.
I should say
It'll be Nate's
it'll
problem.
be a big problem for them, right?
Okay. Looking, not seeing any other questions. Oh, Councilmember Boyd.
I think I know the answer is yes, but just to hear it from you to clarify, any potential mayoral authorization on the cost increase, that's just for this particular
Yes,
project.
that is limited to the purchase of the Opportunity Center.
I don't get to buy a Porsche. Okay. Council President Martz.
Seeing no further questions, I move to authorize the mayor to execute a purchase and sale agreement in substantially the form as the attached agreement Exhibit A, as approved by the city attorney, and other documents necessary to purchase the condominium to be known as the Opportunity Center, located at 1467 Northwest Maple Street in Issaquah, from Trailhead Apartments LLLP at costs for the amount of $7,536,237 plus closing costs to be funded using mitigation and affordable housing funds. And authorize the mayor to review and determine whether to execute change orders for material adverse impacts as defined in the purchase agreement as individually or cumulatively resulting in a purchase price increase of $376,812 to $500,000, or any reduction in the square footage of the Opportunity Center from the approved plans. And authorize the mayor to review and determine whether to execute change orders at the city's request that would result individually or cumulatively in an increase to the purchase price of less than $376,812. And authorize the mayor to appoint a director to serve on the board of directors of the Trailhead Plaza Condominium Association.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Normally at my turn, I repeat the motion, but given that I predict this meeting will be at 9:57 tonight, I'm going to say that I will refer to that as the motion when it comes time to vote. Council President Martins.
So I'm not going to talk long because most of you have heard me opine on this issue many times before. I'll just say that one of the first things that I did when running for council in 2009 was go with my friend Paul Winterstein up to the Together Center in Redmond and meet with Pam Mock and understand what having these sort of community services can mean to a community. We have a natural catchment of approximately the size of the Issaquah School District. It would be very impactful for our community. I continue to strongly support this. I've been strongly supporting this for 10 years. I'll be strongly supporting this for however much longer it takes. I hope the rest of you do as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Adair.
Yeah, I want to echo that. This is a project that I just really, proud of the city in terms of the work that has gone into this to keep pushing forward for something that I think is really important and is an example of something, governments can do if they push hard enough. I do have concerns, obviously. We don't have the tenants and there are issues there, but I am, so part of me gets a little worried about that aspect of it, but I do agree that we need to continue moving forward and do believe that the tenants will be there and that their, reservations just been the climate we're in and how long it has taken to get here, but that once it's actually there in a physical space, it will not be hard to find those people. And I think this will bring a lot of good to this community, and I'm glad we're proceeding and so excited to be seeing the real tangible, results of this. So.
All right. Oh, wait, Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. I am in support of this. My only concerns are using the affordable housing funding for this. And so, yes, I think it's good that we're stating on the record that the intention is for the $3 million to be reimbursed to the affordable housing account that we have. I think that still means that we have a fair amount of affordable housing funds going into this project. And while I think there are crossovers, and it certainly serves the same population, I am always concerned, and I guess this is just a projection out to what we might be looking at for budget and operations. Anytime we are proposing using affordable housing restricted funds for anything other than affordable housing capital projects. This is a capital project, and so it has that tie-in. But I think any dollar that is not building or sustaining affordable housing is something that we need to scrutinize very tightly. And so I am somewhat comfortable with that source of funding. But man, if there is any way that our general fund can reimburse the rest of that affordable housing funding, I think it's something that we should consider as we look at the costs and how we want to stretch that very important set of dollars. Because if we had not adopted that, that money would be going to King County, and that money would be used to build actual affordable housing to serve a population where we do not have very much funding at all. So that would be my only ask as we consider this as a council in the future. If there is any way to reimburse that fund, I think that is something that we should consider doing.
All right, Councilmember Boyd.
I think one of the more difficult things at my day job is if I'm doing casework and someone, asks, like, where can I get services? And, if they're local in Issaquah, sometimes I might have to point them out of town for that. And there's good services, regional partners, right? But I'm so excited for the ability, and I know it's still a few years down the road, and we still don't have people lined up quite yet, but I'm very excited for the prospect of having something right here that the community councils past have been working on for a decade to get here. Just the ripples of what that will mean outward for everyone. Very excited for that. I think we have the great example of, as Director Watling mentioned with the Parks Bond, of how the strategic plan and the Parks Bond set the backbone for what we're going out for with the Parks Bond. And I think it's very identified in the Human Services Strategic Plan of, again and again, it's identified as we have no adult behavioral health facilities. And so I am very excited for the future of this.
Deputy President Jane.
Great. Well, first of all, I want to say I'm very excited to support this motion tonight. I know it's been a very, very long road, and I want to give Deputy City Administrator Andrea Leonard huge kudos for sticking with this project for the better part of a decade as, we work through all this stuff. And I mean, it almost feels unreal that we're going to be able to attend the groundbreaking of this next month. So I'm very, very excited for that. It's also equally exciting to see the search for tenants for this space becoming more real as we actually approach the groundbreaking. So, having identified actual people who are interested in this space, I think is really exciting. On the funding source piece, so the account that this is coming out of, I just want to know, it's a special 0.1% sales tax that is authorized. We have this under state law, and it's housing and related services is the actual name of it in the state law. And so, I do think that this is very much a related service for housing. It is constructing, behavioral health or, low-income health or dental facility, which I do think is critically important and something we should be supporting as a city government, in terms of this benefit that it provides to our community. So I am comfortable with using this funding in this way. But that said, I do think we need to figure out other ways to use these capital dollars and deploy them out in the community. Just, given the rate of inflation, the longer we sit on this money, the less and less it becomes worth. So I think we need to, this is one of the biggest things that we're going to be spending this money on, but we need to do more to figure out, with the remaining millions that we have in this account, how can we put that money to work in our community? So That said, I'm very excited to be supporting this tonight and attending the TOD groundbreaking in just a few short weeks.
All right. I think there's no further discussion. We had a motion by Council President Martz. I asked everyone to memorize when it was read. That is the motion we will be voting on. Yes, it is, as Councilmember Walsh said. It is on the screen in front of you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And that passes unanimously. And I would add, when I joined the council back in 2009, I filled the retiring seat of John Rittenhouse, who was the one who had put the first $1 million towards this project many moons ago. So it's exciting to see that come full circle, and knowing that we have Dan and Andrea here in their last days, I think these are a round of applause for their excellent work. Thanks, effort. And now we'll move to our last agenda item. I realize as mayor, predicting the end of a council meeting is a fool's errand because I don't really talk. You guys control the talking. I'm not going to bet against people who have more control over the outcome on the playing field ever again. Agenda Bill 9207, Title 18 Land Use Code promoting building investments amendments, step-backs and outdoor amenity space, which ironically is relevant because this conversation came up because King County Housing Authority informed us of things in our own code that we might need to think about adjusting, and we have many here to present.
Good evening, everybody. Let me quickly start this. Due to lateness of the hour, I'm just going to breeze through it really quickly, but feel free to pause and if you have questions along the way. So this is something that we came to you all to establish our work plan for the year or a couple of years, and we called it Promoting Building Investment in Central Issaquah. And let me see if I can. So the purpose of the meeting tonight is to look at the first two amendments that have gone through the process out of the 17 that were put on the work plan. And those are community open space and stepbacks. So in terms of the work plan, it was the council retreat, the home builders, staff, and the whiteboard that led to the 17 that we are currently working on. So out of this, the top two are in front of you tonight. They have gone through 3 touches with Planning and Policy Commission. They held a public hearing. Planning, Development, and Environment Committee vetted them out, and now they're in front of you for action. So the first one, step-backs. Also part of your package is the goals and outcomes and objectives that Planning, Development, and Environment Committee worked on for all 17 that will become sort of the working north arrow for Planning and Policy Commission and community conversations to guide these amendments. This work happened at the council level, at the committee level, but we had already started the work on the first 2 with Planning and Policy Commission. So for the step-backs, we heard there were higher construction costs, alignment issues, moisture risks, and so on. There's also a House bill that preempts step-backs for all of these mass timber type of things. And then the goal here was to reduce multiple step-backs as long as the architectural interest goals were met. And also there was a discussion about aligning the requirements of step-backs in the context of other design options. So some possible outcomes when we talked to Planning, Development, and Environment Committee was eliminating multiple step-backs, not having them along natural context areas, and also providing flexibility for the location. And so the proposed amendments do 3 things here. They allow flexibility in the placement of upper-level step-backs along the streets. They eliminate step-backs along natural environment, and they also set up really a five dimensions of what the step-backs really are. So here in strikeout, so along the natural areas, you're no longer required to have step-back requirements. Along the Public streets, you're only required to have one. You can choose where you want to put it, as low as the base of floor 2 up to the base of floor 6, 5 feet in depth. And then we have this 5 different styles that you can choose your style of architectural style in Central Issaquah, and one of them is Northwest Contemporary style, which most of the folks choose this. We also aligned these requirements in this particular style with the remainder of the code, which again is you have the flexibility from floor 2 to floor 6. There are some additional requirements for design. I'm not going to get into that. That's not in front of you today. For natural environments, there are also some other requirements in the code that talk about the orientation towards natural environment. That's not in front of you today. Moving on to outdoor amenity space requirements. Really the issue here we heard from the builders was our private outdoor spaces like the balconies, our requirements were excessive. And they also sort of reference the water penetration issues when they put it on every balcony, a balcony on every unit. So the goal was to balance the outdoor amenity space with development feasibility, and also to find a way to provide residents with meaningful outdoor amenity space while allowing development. So in this case, what we've done, or what's in front of you for action tonight is the private balcony spaces have been reduced. We've streamlined the code to eliminate the need for deviations, so it's an outright permitted reduction. And also, while we were looking at this, their previous state law changes happen, and if there's converting an existing office building to a residential housing projects, there's a lot of flexibility built into it. But that flexibility did not include flexibility from outdoor spaces, amenity spaces. And if you have a glass-clad building, you're not going to take out the glass and put balconies. So we built in some flexibility for those kind of conversions as well. And so again, I think I kind of talked about this. It's going from 50% to 30% of the units have to have balconies. You no longer have to get deviations, and it's a permitted outright requirement there. This table kind of shows you, as we went through this process, Planning and Policy Commission also looked at really smaller scale projects. So we used to say anything up to 5 unit, 5 plexes don't have to have this outdoor space. They increased that to 9 units. So they felt like for smaller infill projects that are up to 9 units, that you don't have to have common outdoor spaces, that those only get triggered at 10 or above. And the 50% is now only for 30%. It's no longer a deviation. And then they added this exemption for converting a commercial building to a residential use. You also get some flexibility. You still have to provide some common amenity space to the maximum extent feasible. If there is room around the site, you would add it, but not to the extent that the code requires. So that's pretty much a summary of what's in front of you. If you adopt these changes tonight, they become effective 5 days from publication. The administration's recommendation is that you approve these amendments as presented.
Councilmember Walsh, you're the committee chair. Did you want to make comments?
Yeah, so PDE reviewed these 2 proposed changes to the land use code. I'll start with the second one. Regarding the outdoor amenity areas, we unanimously agreed to the changes that PPC had recommended and that staff had worked up, which created more options for private spaces without reducing the overall required outdoor space. For the step-backs, the committee generally agreed that we need more flexibility here and recommended, outside of our motion, that we move forward toward a menu of options for design standards. And so that was kind of a change in the approach from when we had first adopted as a council the promoting building investments. So we really thought step-backs should be part of a group of things, much like we do with some of our other sustainability things, where we give a menu of options and choices can be made there. So after that set of feedback, knowing that this had come through PPC and was a change and improvement to what we currently have in our land use code, two of the members of PDE agreed that we should move forward with these step-back adjustments while the staff works on that menu of options to be presented to us at a later time. While one member thought it would be better at this point to remove the step-back requirements in the interim. So there was a little bit of disagreement there on how we approach it, but there was at least 2 out of 3 members on both of these areas.
Councilmember Dare.
So we had some emails, on this and you responded. I was curious about comparisons to other nearby cities that we're trying to either emulate or do better than and stuff like that. And you sent a list of some of them. And, so like Bothell had no step backs. Bellingham has 15 feet starting at the 4th floor. Edmonds 5 feet deep at 26 feet. And, there's a few variations here. It's not necessarily all the areas that maybe we want to consider. So are there any does this mirror any other city that's doing it in this way that we're proposing in the changes here, or is that still going to also be Issaquah specific? I'm just kind of curious in terms of how we're modeling this, if we're trying to match places that have more development, is that what we're doing, or is this something we're coming up with ourselves?
Sure. I think we always hear a comparison between Kirkland and Redmond. So we looked at those 2 cities, and those are included in your chart there. Redmond has some of a similar thing, but they have a much deeper step back. They require 20, so we're requiring only 5 feet. Kirkland, development up in their downtown has a lot of step backs of what actually got built there. But they are also sort of, so we've gone beyond what Kirkland and Redmond require already. So it's not that we're our requirements are more excessive than those communities if you're trying to just compare. But each community has different conversations. Redmond is a little bit similar to us because they have high water table. They are also providing drinking water supply, so they have fewer underground parking requirements. So the look and feel of those buildings is a little bit like ours because you get 7 stories tall building versus Kirkland, where they have been able to get some of the underground parking in their buildings. It's not doable. It's just more expensive sometimes with a higher groundwater. So there's not like a perfect, this is what we cop, this is another city. They're a little bit all over the place, but we feel as this went through, it's striking a good balance between still requiring a little bit of a step back, but giving that flexibility and eliminating it on all sides of the building. So just focusing on the public realm along the street.
So if you could, when you bring up in terms of how we are, you're talking about that currently you'd say we have a higher requirement than Redmond, and then this would put us equal or lower requirement?
Yes.
But the current version would be more difficult for developers than their current ones? Because I see these and I see still a lot of 10 feet deep and these type of things. These look to me very similar to what we already currently have. And so that's what I'm trying to kind of quantify and understand is our current system really that different or more difficult than similar cities is what I'm trying to get to.
We heard that step backs are an issue for the builders. That came in through our builders roundtable conversation, and we do believe that there is, we heard from the TOD developers, they're here. I think the council approved the housing agreement to forego or allow that same flexibility that's now in the code, so everyone else has the same opportunity that we provided TOD developer. So there's some truth to the fact that construction costs go up because of the staggering, that the size of the beams goes up, labor costs are more, stacking of plumbing and all of those things are important. So Yes. Our current standards, to answer your question, are more design-oriented, that require multiple step backs and things like that, where what's in front of you has gone through a process that Planning and Policy Commission heard from the community, looked at what's there, compared it with other jurisdictions, and what we've brought forth is their recommendation, which is not having it along the natural context, only requiring it along public streets, not having multiple step backs, providing flexibility, and limiting the depth to 5 feet. It can be more, but from a city's regulation standpoint, that's the bare minimum.
Deputy President Jay.
Yeah, and I, to respond to Councilmember Adair, hopefully that's okay. I think, you'd mentioned this kind of came in response to requests from the, from King County Housing Authority. So last year, when they were in the design process, they came to us and were like, hey, the step back requirement you have, basically we were saying it's required at the 5th floor. So that's in the part that's a wood structure. So normally, with a 5-story building, you can like stack all of them and have all the wood beams, going up and down. But then if you had it at the 5th floor, that would be in the middle of where the wood is. So because it's an 8-story building, you'd have 3 floors of concrete, 5 floors of wood. And they said it would cost $1.2 million to do this. And, given that it's like a publicly funded housing project, we felt like it was, and they were retaining the step back, just putting it where it switches from concrete to wood at the 3rd floor. And actually, in the renderings, the one with the 3rd floor step back looked better than the one with the 5th floor step back. And I showed the pictures, the renderings, to like multiple of my friends to get their take on the, relative aesthetics. And so they, they all agreed. So I think this change, in my opinion, based on the one project that we've seen, actually makes the buildings look slightly better. And also reduces costs. Because I think there is an argument to be made that it's important to have things that look nice. People want to look at nice things. But also, is having a step back that costs $1.2 million really the best aesthetic investment if we're talking $1.2 million? Like, how many murals could we put in our city for $1.2 million? And would that actually make people's, does that have a bigger aesthetic impact? Murals, landscaping, all that kind of stuff. Just if we're thinking about the relative cost of different aesthetic improvements. So that's my
I
soapbox.
feel a potential mural amendment coming. I like it. Councilmember Nichols.
Quickly on the range of options that were considered, did PPC consider an option like Bothell that has no step back requirements?
Kristen Leeson, who's not here, explored all different options with them. I don't specifically remember if there was they definitely talked about it along the natural context areas to eliminate that. That's where they ended up with the natural context, because the code itself currently requires that same step back along natural context, but they felt along the public realm, along public street, we still needed to maintain one step back.
So this, I want to pick on this because this is going to be the crux of my comments in a
Sure.
few moments. When you say that all options were explored, I want to correct my understanding, but I didn't see PPC discussing that. So I wanted to see if that was in fact the case, to remove step back requirements entirely.
I'll have to look at the actual questions that were posed to them. We were asking them policy questions along more broadly, so it didn't come, we didn't, at staff level, if you're asking if we said no step backs should be required along the public realm, I don't think that was presented in that way. Yes.
Okay, not seeing any other questions. So many. Is there a motion? Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. I move to adopt ordinance number 3143, amending chapters 18.600, 18.602, and 18.702 of the Issaquah Municipal Code to allow flexibility for upper-level stepbacks, and adopt ordinance number 3144, amending Chapter 18.608, Community Amenity Spaces of the Issaquah Municipal Code to reduce the amount of required open amenity space in multifamily residential developments.
Second.
Okay. Pay attention to what Councilmember Walsh just said. I'm once again not going to repeat that. Councilmember Nichols.
Okay, I'm going to go on for a little bit, so apologies in advance. I know it's late, but this is the first one of these that we're talking about, and I think it's really important that we get the process for this right. So I'm going to suggest that we vote no on the proposed amendments to ordinance number 3143, so stepbacks, and send it back to either PPC or PDE. I don't think it matters a lot, with a greater set of options to investigate. At our PDE committee on the 2nd, I think it's fair to say, but please chime in after, that all three of us were aligned that, one, we wanted to see step-back requirements reduced from their current level, and that we weren't fully satisfied with the options that we were presented. I think we differed primarily on timing of when and how to address that, and whether we should have this as a kind of an interim set of rules on this topic while we wait for it to come back to deal with it as an option in architectural standards. But please correct me in a moment if I'm misquoting anyone. Turning back the clock a little bit, just kind of zooming out and looking at what we're doing overall. On our March 9th meeting, when we endorsed this housing work plan as a whole, Council President Martz said something I think we've also all agreed should guide our work. And he spoke about the big knobs on the stereo, and I think I'm quoting him correctly there, that we are trying to tune, and that we should run them through their full range rather than picking 2 points on the dial and calling it done. I really agree with that, and I agreed then and I agree now, but that's not quite what happened here, and I think it's because this is the first set of things we were looking at, and that guidance wasn't fully understood. Because we didn't get that full range. We got some flexibility that was added, that's great, but it does still leave substantial step-back requirements in place. So the direction of this vector was as PDE requested, but the magnitudes we wanted to see were overly constrained. And again, if you'll grant me a little more time to go on a little historical interlude here, because I think it's important for the context of why this is so important on this particular topic. So my homework on where stepbacks came from leaves me really concerned, frankly, and is motivating my stubbornness on this topic. The first time stepbacks appear in our transcript is a 2017 Development Commission meeting, and there were some troubling comments in it. One commissioner pressed the consultant who was proposing these new rules on exactly this risk that I'm worried about costs, that I believe we've seen materialize. He said that design standards like these will in aggregate, will price people out, and that a place like ours will become, quote, very self-selecting and, quote, a boutique-y place. The consultant's answer to that was that affordability was, quote, out of scope. This is the answer in this commission. When the step-back commission concept was first brought up, affordability was declared out of scope. I don't think affordability should ever be declared out of scope. And that punt on this topic has lasted a decade, and it's in front of us tonight. And I think we really owe it to our residents to get this right. Deputy Council President Zhang raised that one of the examples of the cost of this, $1.2 million. And one example we had, I've also talked to several local home builders about what this means for people who actually live in these units, what the rent increase would be for them due to this particular requirement as we've got it. It is hard to calculate precisely. There's a lot of market dynamics at play. I'm not going to pretend these are exact numbers, but their estimates landed at somewhere between $20 to $40 per unit per month for a step back. For a single regulation, with benefits that are arguably questionable. And I think that's a lot to ask. It's 5 to 10 times more than what we just asked, what we're going to likely ask residents to take on with a park bond that has tremendous benefits associated with it. I'm also, just from a policy and good government's perspective, concerned about seesawing with these types of regulations. If we vote yes tonight, but we as a council plan to revisit this in a few months under architectural standards, I think that back and forth could actually delay housing, because anyone watching to see what we're doing is going to see a moving target, and there's nothing worse for business than uncertainty. So I'm a no. Thank you for letting me ramble on that for a few moments. And I would like to see this sent back to PPC or PDE. I think either could be fine, with a full review where we turn the knobs all the way up and down and see where we land.
Okay. And before Councilmember Walsh, I just want to, I don't know if there's a question for Minnie or our city administrator, but can the council committees can also recommend whatever they want out of the committees, correct?
Correct. Yeah, the process is Planning and Policy Commission makes a recommendation, Planning and Development and Environment Committee makes a recommendation, you as a body are the only ones that can actually change the law.
Okay. Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. Director Dollywall, can you talk about, I think the feedback from PD was pretty clear beyond this interim period, but pretty clear that we wanted to look at a menu of design options that would create variability in our buildings and other things so that we don't get, flat buildings with just, windows or flat areas. What is the timeline or the sense of when that is going to come through PPC all the way to council? So what time period are we looking at between potential adoption of adjustments to regulations tonight versus a future idea?
Yeah, so the architectural standards discussion is Q4 of 2026. So it's a matter of the next 6 months to get that in place. And in terms of these two amendments, these came from the builders community. And so in terms of sending the message that, that you are interested in taking action, taking care of this early, and that's how, because these were easy to process, so they got put on the top line because we could just bring that forward. Even though they were easy to process, but if you look at the 3 packets for Planning and Policy Commission, I think I sent you one of them, there was a fair amount of discussion with them. I mean, we showed them a lot of samples. I do have those pictures if you want me to pull those up, of what a good design can mean in terms of getting this in place. So if you adopt this tonight, and then when we are having a full in-depth conversation about the total menu of choices for design later this year, we will have that policy question with Planning and Policy Commission. How does the step back fit in with the other pieces? And if this is, there's a balance between predictability of telling people what the design should be or leaving it too broad that it'll be vetted out with the Development Commission at a hearing. So there's always that balance of predictability versus too much flexibility. And sometimes the developers have told us that it's better for them to know up front, this is what you want, and they can incorporate it into the designs than leaving it so open-ended that they can't get an answer to that question either. So just as some additional background. But I'm happy to pull up some photos if you want to look at actual examples.
So I hear that you're saying that a set of design menu options would come back to us Q4, but you're also stating in the same set of sentences that there is concern about presenting a menu of options that maybe it provides either too much flexibility or too much uncertainty to builders. So
it'll happen as part of that conversation. So architectural, right now they're too hardwired. There is not any flexibility of what you can do. So as we have that conversation with that number 8 item on the list of 17, it can't be make it nice, for the sake of easy. There's a 1990 a case that they teach in planning schools that has Issaquah and Anderson case that our standards were too vague. We didn't really say what design standards should be met. And so all along the school of thought is that you actually have design options that you can quantify, that they're not so subjective. So as we talk about that conversation, yes, we'll talk about flexibility, but at the same time, it'll have to be something that isn't vague and arbitrary either.
Yeah. So if one of those options on a menu of design options was step backs with these requirements that we are potentially adopting today, that provides the certainty to a builder who might want to look at that versus 5 other options and evaluate what they think would be most appropriate for their project.
Sure. So the ultimate goal is you're trying to have modulation in a building, so it's not a complete concrete jungle with no sort of design sense. Part of the intent is to have a base, a middle, and a top of the building. Part of the intent is to have variety in designs and so on. So yes, we'll have all of that conversation as part of that architectural standards conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Adair.
Yeah, so I'm going to be honest in that actually still not even fully sure how I want to vote on this. I hear Councilmember Nichols' points, although actually coming at it from a different direction in that I'm not as willing to give up code as is, considering the work that went into it. I actually do like step-backs. My time in LA saw a lot of development of cities that did become these concrete boxes that have been spoken of and just seem like prisons or lost all identity, things that were little towns that just got wiped out because people just could build cheaply and build whatever they wanted, and it just became places where, yes, people lived there, but it was not a town, it was not a home. Equally, like the loss of step-backs can lead to things like only the people at the top can see the mountains, but no one else can. And things like that, views have become an issue, and as well as what the ground floor feels like. So like, I'm not one that would be, if this said no step-backs, I would have a lot of concerns. The proposed requirements here, I'm okay with, like, for example, the TODI project is a great example. Like, it's not that there's no step back, they just got to drop it down. That to me is just fine, especially when coupled with a thing of what they are bringing to the community in exchange for those changes. And things like that, I think, are absolutely great, where you are bringing more to the community, and thus, yes, you can get these deviations or whatever may come to play. And so I'm okay with the that we still have a step back, but there's flexibility to it. Because, yeah, if it's $1 million cheaper just to put it on 3 than 5, that to me is just fine and makes sense. Let's do it. But I can say that I am, someone that is, I want the real tangible changes that get development moving, which, I brought up in my email, what they've said, these larger issues, the paved buffers and things like that, those feel to me like the real concrete barriers to development here, and individual line item codes everybody has these things, and it doesn't feel that different to me. So, where I'm coming at right now is that, I'm hesitant to just change codes just because we can without it really seeing what the tangible benefit is. Though these in particular, I don't have a strong aversion to, and so likely would support these at the moment. But I can say that I have some uncertainty overall.
Okay, I'm getting my sequence. I know Councilmember Nichols, and then Deputy President Jang, and then Council President Marks. Is that right? Okay.
I'll wait since I went first. So.
Okay, Deputy President Jang.
Great. Yeah, so as far as this specific amendment goes, I think it's fine. I think, the way that we've come to this based on the feedback from KCHA and kind of seeing the actual cost and impact of it, I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of do this as an interim stopgap. In terms of, the potential menu of options, so this idea was kind of inspired by actually this architecture firm in Seattle who had proposed this as a, better approach to design standards, called Neiman Tabor. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but, they have a few examples of, and these are like very, objective things that you can give points for. So, for example, they say brick or stone masonry, you can get 5 points for doing that. Wood siding with the factory finish or other pretreatment to enhance aesthetics and durability, 2 points. There's a very, very long list of different things that have aesthetic qualities, including commissioned art, incorporate commissioned artwork in a location visible to the public, 1 point. This could be, the murals. And this is honestly like just for it basically gives builders the options to pick, what makes the most sense for your site, and you would have to get a certain amount of points and do whatever makes the most sense to, provide aesthetic value that people like. One thing that I think, folks in Issaquah would like, for example, would be like, providing additional open space beyond what's the code minimum, you could get points for that. So I think as we explore, what this actually looks like, I think the problem, and this is kind of what you see in Seattle, is like because they have very strict design regulations actually, but every building basically looks the same. And it's because it's like, okay, everyone, has to do all these specific things. And so they've figured out, it's like, this is the specific townhome floor plan that meets all the regulations. So we're just going to copy and paste it everywhere. And so, to the extent that we can give more optionality and, do that, I think I'm very much looking forward to seeing what we do on that in Q4. That said, I think, for this interim period, making the step backs less, prohibitive by requiring, instead of requiring them at the 5th floor, we can have them anywhere between that section, I think is fine. And then for the open space, I do think it's interesting that we talk about common open space in apartment complexes as like the equivalent to having access to open space, period. In my opinion, it's like a lot of these they're like fine, I guess, but really, I think what we need to be focusing on is like, do people actually have access to parks within a very short walking distance of their home? Because especially for some of these smaller ones where it's like the size of, open space that you get, it can be like a postage stamp size, little pocket park that doesn't even make sense, but you're just required to do it. So I think we should think about, in terms of access to open space, how can we make it so that more people are living within, close access to like the really great parks that we have in our city, like Confluence Park. So those are some of my thoughts. I think, the way that we've set up these requirements now, I think, it's a good balance with making things, making it more feasible to do, redevelopment in Issaquah. But I do think we need to kind of have a bigger picture view of, as we are building out the city, what are the different things we need to do to make sure that, the public realm is great and it remains a great place to live, even as, and perhaps even gets better as we build more homes for more people. So I will be voting yes.
Council President Martins.
Thanks. I have a question for Chair, PDE Chair Walsh. So did you in committee look at zero step back? Was there a discussion about whether zero step back should be considered?
I think that idea, I was trying to remember if you had proposed that concept so much as, I think it was more about when a conversation would happen and whether or not these were appropriate ideas as an interim before a menu of design options. Is that what you would agree? No?
Well, I'm just, because I am very much, I resonate very much with Councilmember Nichols' idea that we should be able to turn the full knob. And so, and it seems weird to me to do an interim step if we're going to consider turning the full knob in a few short months. That seems to be a weird environment. I will tell you, as a parent of a child who had to look for housing not that long ago, my son loves Newcastle Commons. Newcastle Commons doesn't have setbacks, but it doesn't look like a prison, and it doesn't look like a giant brick, and it doesn't look like an awful place to live. It's a great place to live, partially because, as people have been talking about here, it's got open spaces nearby, and it's got restaurants within walking distance, and it's got grocery stores within a walking distance, and so, I have been convinced by members of this council that part of our crisis for workforce housing is not having more market rate housing. So I'm inherently inclined towards opening the solution space up wider. So as chair of PDE, I'm sort of inclined to try to test the waters and see if there would be interest on the council now in sending this back to PDE and considering that further. But I wanted to talk to you about it first as the chair. I don't want to be like, I don't like the decision you guys came to, so I want you to noodle on it some more. That's not my intent.
Yeah, I think our main feedback was we wanted a menu of options that a project could look at to earn points or whatever it is to create the architectural interest. And looking at how the Promoting Building Investments plan for the 2 years came about, we didn't feel like that was something that could happen in this time frame. So what we were looking at was really do we adopt an adjustment to the stepbacks in this time period so that we don't have the current rules on the books versus do we, and I don't think we really appropriately looked at, should we eliminate stepbacks altogether in that interim time, because we as a committee agreed that the best avenue forward to achieve all of the goals was to have that menu of options, and that did not seem like something that was available from a staff recommendation at that time.
Thank you for that explanation. I'm going to be a no tonight because the path that we're taking right now does not strike me as having the urgency and severity necessary for the housing crisis and affordability crisis we have in the city right now. So I'm going to be a no, but I would also be an amenable to sending it back to committee if the committee would be willing to consider a broader range of solutions immediately that would have more of an impact on cost of build immediately. Thank you.
Councilmember Dare, or Nichols.
A couple comments just to clarify what my recollection of that meeting, and memory is faulty, but what my recollection was. So we did not discuss zero stepbacks. I had requested that be something that we discussed, but that wasn't something that was presented. I made some kind of ham-fisted attempts to think through how we might be able to do that in the meeting, but it's a it needs this is one of these things that actually does need the process. I tried to figure out if I could just figure out how to like amend it on the fly in the meeting. It was going to be wrong. So I didn't want to do that. Well, I wanted to, but I didn't. So we did not discuss that. We didn't go up, because it does need that, it needs some staff presentation ahead of time to at least say what are the things, because it's at least 10 or 15 sentences that have to be right in a somewhat complicated ordinance to get this there. So we didn't look at it then. I'm concerned that we're conflating multiple motions here. The motion that we're discussing is about this particular amendment to this ordinance, which is about the stepbacks. To be clear, as far as our broader, bigger picture discussions on architectural standards go, I'm all for that. I think it's really interesting, and it could be really great. I'm extremely skeptical we're going to be able to do it in the time frame we think we are, because I think it's going to be really, really hard. As has been referenced, like this could have all sorts of complicated knockoff effects because of the added I'll just leave it. I think it's going to be hard to get a point system that has never been done before set up in a reasonable amount of time, and that we shouldn't be conflating this, whatever our goals are on stepbacks, whatever they are, with that. I think we should just be thinking of that separately, because I don't think it's going to be done in Q4. I think we're going to debate it a lot, and I think it's going to need a lot more work. So I'm concerned about conflating those two things, and I think we should be treating this as, this was the first thing on our housing work plan. Did we get it right? If not, if yes, vote yes. If no, and if one of those reasons why no is because we didn't look at all of the options, look at the options, come back with at least those options analyzed, and then present that. And then just finally, as a specific point as to one of Councilmember Adair's questions on the cost of this, we do understand somewhat of the cost of this. This is what I was getting at as far as this, having stepbacks at all is what's adding $20 to $40 a month per unit in rent. So that's the trade-off. They do have aesthetic benefits. I mean, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, clearly, but I mean, some will argue they have that, and is it worth that cost? So we can peg this somewhere as to what this would cost versus cities such as like Bothell that does not have any step-back requirements at all. I would argue Bothell is not a concrete jungle, but I don't know how to quantify units of jungleness, so I don't want to go down that rabbit hole per se. So I think that those are the sets of comments I had.
Councilmember Dare.
Just a comment to Council President Martz. Newcastle Commons looks to be 5 stories, so it would still fit in these existing step-back requirements that we have here, and still look the same. So just to my pros step-back case. As for, I think I'm still confused. Like I said, these are specific requirements. I am okay with them. They add some flexibility and to the code and don't jeopardize too much. So I'm okay with these as is. And so now, but it seems like we're falling into this broader conversation of what. It's like I'm unsure. Like I said, if we approve these, how the future conversation goes. And if we're talking about this menu, are we creating more confusion? And so I'm uncertain whether to vote for this because I think it's okay as is, but then we're going to be changing things again later or not. And so I'm getting a little confused in terms of where this discussion is going and what this vote will represent in terms of the long-term consequences. And whether this should all be reconsidered and have a more cohesive package or not. Is where I am. I don't necessarily need more options specifically on stepbacks. It's more like, are we going to be working on each of these one by one like this? Or is it that we're trying to get to some sort of cumulative larger plan? And so that's where I'm kind of concerned in terms of how to vote now, of whether we're locking into some really piecemeal way or if we should be just pausing to consider it as a more comprehensive plan or not.
And I think, before I go to Councilmember Walsh, I think that we have 17 items. This is a long list of items that, we're putting community planning development to come up with improvements on. So I think our challenge is every one of those 17 items, you're basically going to say status quo, which is fairly rigid in Issaquah, progress that makes it easier to build because you're providing additional flexibility and choices. And then there's always going to be the full Monty choice, which is just saying, we're not regulating this field whatsoever. And you're going to have that choice basically on all 17 of these projects. And I hope people realize, the committees are going to have that choice. So committees can always say, I want to see the removal entirely of any regulations in the space. And so I think in all 17 of these, I think that is just going to be in front. And so, but this conversation is never going to get easier on all 17 of these. Because right now, these are the two that I think our assessment were the lowest hanging of fruit. The fruit gets higher up the tree as we go further down this list. And I think as Councilmember Nichols said, when we get into creating a point system for design standards, and there's going to be arguments, do you need 10 points or 15 points? And how much is open space worth? Is it worth 1 point or 3 points? It's going to be an endless stream of permutations. And so it's only going to get harder, and I think that's just where we're at right now, and this council is going to have to decide. I think, first of all, tonight, there's always a choice to divide the question, because you have full agreement, it sounds like, in the council on the open space amenities. And then I think you're going to have to decide, because there's going to be members of the council that are comfortable removing all the regulations, and there's going to be members of the council that want to remove all the regulations. And I think it's just going to be, this is the first of many of these to come, which I think is going to be our challenge, is we're trying to get through this. But if we want to do it in an efficient, timely manner, we're also going to have to make some difficult votes where we may not have unanimous consensus, because there's a reason these things haven't changed, is they're not easy to change. Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to frame this conversation. I think what I would also say is, I'm hearing from several council members tonight that we need to make sure that the staff information and that the council committees are treating this with the urgency that it deserves. And so I will take that as really good feedback and something that we can look at. I think this is the first piece out of the gate. And from my perspective, I'm comfortable moving forward with this as I would say, an interim adjustment as we kind of look at this larger picture of what are the most important, biggest levers that we can do. How do we pull something together that meets our community needs? And then also just saying this as an adjustment will allow any building under the 5 stories to not have a step back. And so that clears a lot of hurdles for what I would say are probably the largest set of apartments and condos that we would see in the next year or so. So I think this moves us substantially in the direction that we want to go. I think it also gives us the larger council sense of urgency as we look at some of the bigger areas that potentially move forward. So that would be my approach, but I would love to hear from any other council members.
Councilmember Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that we should go forward with both the motions this evening, giving some progress or showing some progress on the step backs will be important to the development community. They know that if it's under 5, they don't have to worry about that particular item. We're not building a lot of apartments or buildings over 5 in Issaquah that are residential right now. But if we set a rule right now for 5 and below, as the committee chair is suggesting, I think it does give the development community a green light to know that those are the rules for now. They can put their plans in, they can get vested under those rules and go forward if they have a project that's appropriate. We need to, I will commend the mayor for making great progress with the issue of housing and making Issaquah known as a city that is more open to considering options for housing and considering new projects for housing. That's a piece of feedback that I hear when I'm out in the community. I think that approving these amendments tonight furthers that message and also emphasizes that we are trying to make progress on these things. If we don't approve the amendments tonight, it may be another year before we're going to get back to them. If we approve them tonight, we send the development community a message that these are the projects that we can approve without the step backs. If you have something that you think you want to get put through and get vested, go ahead and do it. I think it's the right message to send during this housing supply challenge that we're having. Also, in addition to that, we're also seeing that housing inventories are rising, both for new housing and for existing homes. A number of builders have inventory that's sitting on their books that they can't necessarily get rid of and sell. Some are taking losses on their projects, et cetera. That's just a short way of saying we need to continue to show as a council that we are making progress on rules that are going to help other projects come in that make sense. And I think both of these amendments, both of these proposals tonight do that. Thank you.
Okay. Deputy President Chang.
Yeah, I think I will also be voting yes tonight. I think to Councilmember Joe's point, I think saying we're voting no because this doesn't go far enough is a bit, at least to me, strange when we should, in my opinion, it shows some progress, and that's something we can point to as, we're making progress and making it easier and more cost effective to build in Issaquah. We can always revisit stepbacks. We could even, put it on for Q3 to say, should we do another amendment to completely, abolish step back requirements in the city of Issaquah? I just, given that there's so many other things on the list and anytime, we have to spend months going through PPC, PDE, et cetera, at least my preference is for us to kind of put this one to bed for now and keep moving forward with some of our other, items that are further later in the timeline, including those that may be more substantive, such as the paved buffer redevelopment thing.
Councilmember Boyd.
I plan on voting yes because I don't want this to be a case of the perfect getting in the way of the good, I suppose.
Councilmember Boyd gets the Brevity Award. Council President Martz.
So the hour is late, and I want to make sure that my comments are not misconstrued as more grumpy, because they're not intended to be grumpy. One of the reasons that I am voting no is I think that there has been a pattern for a long time. I'm not going to say it's this mayor or the city administrator. I think there has been, especially with code, I have a sense sometimes that the administration doesn't always send us the breadth of consideration that we would like. And so one of the reasons I'm going to be voting no tonight is in the future, because this is clearly going to pass. I understand how these things work. But I really want to see the full range in the future. I really, when this council says we want to see the full range of possibilities, we want to see the full range of possibilities. We don't want to see a subset. Again, I'm not trying to be grumpy. I'm just setting a standard for going for the future. I think Councilmember Nichols is really right that we want to see the full knob. And you can say, like, don't do 0 setbacks because you'll create bricks or whatever, but I think we want to consider those. And so I want to see it in the future. And so that's part of what my no vote's going to be tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, the motion for the council, which I will reread since it's been an hour. Adopt ordinance number 3143, amending chapters 18.600.18.602 and 18.702 of the Issaquah Municipal Code to allow flexibility for upper level step backs, and adopt ordinance 3144, amending chapter 18.608, community amenity spaces of the Issaquah Municipal Code to reduce the amount of required open amenity space in multifamily residential developments. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no.
No.
Nope.
That's Council President Martz and Councilmember Nichols voting no. That passes 5-2, and that will take us to committee reports. Councilmember Boyd.
I, as of last week, have been appointed to the PSRC Transportation Policy Board. My first meeting for that will be 9 a.m. on Thursday, July 9. I think I have that date right. Then I'll have a report.
I know, that was your first report, right? That's good. Councilmember Dick.
I have 3 reports. On June 18th was the first meeting of the Sound Cities Equity and Inclusion Cabinet, which I was recently appointed to. It was just an introductory meeting to kind of get to know all the members. We started talking about what we wanted to do. This cabinet hadn't been around, and so it's kind of newly formed, so just kind of getting an idea of what a work plan might look like. We mostly ended up discussing, how each of our cities have handled different immigration issues and are kind of looking to collect our experiences and resources into like a, collective list so that we can all discuss and kind of coordinate ideas there. But so that is, just getting going and more to come as we meet. I had June 24th, I had the Kokani ILA management meeting. It was just really talking about the draft of the 2027 budget, which does not have very much of an increase, so nice and small there. And some updates to voting procedures for if there's like an emergency and they need to get the management committee together quickly. And then finally, just earlier today was my the second meeting for the Eastside Fire Finance and Administration Committee. So continued budget discussions there on drafting that. This was really more detail on the operating expenses, as well as diving in, because we didn't do it in the first meeting, about equipment and apparatus and capital facilities maintenance. So this is still more of the detail and the requests on their side and still big numbers, but the next meeting will likely be where we start to really push back and get to what will be a hopefully more achievable budget. And the next meeting for that is July 21st. And that concludes my reports for today.
Yeoman's work you're doing on that committee. Councilmember Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no reports.
Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. I just have a list of meetings coming up. Planning, Development, Environment next meeting is July 7th. Eastside Fire and Rescue meets next Thursday on July 9th. Agenda hasn't yet been adopted. A Regional Coalition for Housing Committee of Electeds next meeting is July 23rd. Again, no agenda. And King County Affordable Housing Committee next meets on July 9th, but it overlaps with Eastside Fire and Rescue, so I will miss it. And that concludes my report.
Councilmember Joe.
Thank you. The Mobility and Infrastructure Committee is scheduled to meet July 14th. Currently, there are no items on the work plan. However, Director Moon may have a WSDOT issue that may come on the agenda, so it may be canceled. Committee members, please watch your emails for that. Cascade Water Alliance had a board meeting on the 24th that I attended. The main item was a budget discussion. Water rates are scheduled to rise by about 12.8% for 2027 for Issaquah. The budget is still being formed, but just want to let people know that is in the future potentially. Also, the Cascade Supply Program was discussed. It was asked that there be some further work done on that. It is the committee that's going to be overlooking the 30-mile transportation line that Cascade Water Alliance is building from Tacoma to bring water from Tacoma up to our system. It's a multi-billion-dollar project. We want to make sure the oversight is correct for that, and the board wanted more work completed before that process for oversight is approved. It'll probably come back in September. The LTAC committee will be meeting on July 28th. We will be reviewing and evaluating the new requests for the second round of funding. $100,000 has been opened up for new items in the second shoulder season to support visits from over 50 miles away and overnight stays. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Deputy President Chang.
Great. I have one report. So the King County Regional Homelessness Authority Governing Board met last Friday, June 26th. We received an update on KCRHA's Corrective Action Plan, which is the plan that they adopted in response to their forensic investigation findings. And then we also received a briefing on the point in time count, which has been in the news recently. So the top line findings from that are that overall homelessness between 2024 and 26 went up by 9%, and unsheltered homelessness really went up by about 21%. And that's actually driven in part by the fact that the number of shelter beds in King County decreased between 2024 to 26 by several hundred. A lot of this was actually due to one specific shelter closing. It was operated by Mary's Place. It was a planned redevelopment where they're actually now redeveloping it into affordable housing with more units. But Mary's Place wanted to move into a different building but could not find a suitable location, so they had to close it. And so, you know, I think one of the things that this really goes to show is Seattle and King County really are an outlier in the country in terms of having such a high proportion of unsheltered homelessness. And so figuring out, you know, how can we have more shelters and transitional housing available for folks in our community, including, you know, there's some amount in other communities. There's none in Issaquah right now, and so thinking about how we can, you know, assist with that regional effort. The other thing to note is that the point in time count is conducted at the county level, but it doesn't have a breakdown on a regional or city level. I actually, back when they did it in January, volunteered at the site here in Issaquah, which is, you know, co-located with the meals program. So, you know, there is a very significant need, not just in King County as a whole, but in Issaquah specifically. Looks very different in different communities, and so, you know, I think we, at least speaking for myself, I feel that we have a responsibility to do what we can to help, you know, address this regional crisis. So, and one meeting to report, so the East Side Transportation Partnership, our next meeting is on July 10th, Friday, July 10th, and I think the next King County Regional Homelessness Authority Governing Board meeting is Friday, July 24th at 10 a.m., and then we also have a King County Flood Control District Advisory Committee meeting that same day, July 24th at 1:30 p.m. The Flood Control District Advisory Committee meeting for June was canceled because a lot of people were traveling back from the AWC conference in Spokane during our normal meeting time. That concludes my report.
Council President Martins.
Two things, one sort of boring, one a lot more interesting. Sound Cities Association Board of Directors met on Wednesday, June 17th at Renton City Hall. The only thing we did that really matters is we appointed Councilmember Boyd as the SCA alternate to PSRC Transportation Policy Board, as she's already mentioned. However, the interesting is upcoming SCA PIC meeting, Wednesday, July 8th, is actually going to be at the Kirkland Justice Center. And there is a pre-PIC meeting that is open to all PIC members, and it's going to be a Corrections Crisis Care Center virtual tour. So although we're going to be there, it says staff from Connections Crisis Response Center provide a virtual tour, and Q&A of the Connections Kirkland facility. Again, that's open to everybody. You would then not be invited to join us for the PIC meeting that occurs immediately thereafter, but this seems like a particularly interesting topic. So then at the PIC meeting that will occur starting at 7 p.m. in the same location, we're going to take action on the 2027 solid waste rate letter. That promises to be spicy. We're going to have a discussion on affordable housing levy part 2. We're going to have a discussion on the mid-implementation plan. This is the mental illness, drug dependency, sales tax, and its implementation. So it should be an action-packed PIC meeting, and I will report back on that afterwards. This concludes my report. Oh, and I'm sorry. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, one last thing. Anybody who wants to you could carpool with me, but then you wouldn't be staying for the PIC meeting. You could stay for the PIC meeting, you would just have to sit in the back of the room quietly and say nothing. So anyhow, if anybody wants to come for the Connections Crisis Care Center and carpool with me, you'd be welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, Deputy President Cheng and I toured that Crisis Care Center in person earlier this year. Okay, Mayor's report, down on 4th of July. This is the week. We've been talking about this event for a long time. It starts Thursday with the Chalk Art Festival. That's noon to 4 here at the Community Center. There's going to be live music, lots of entertainment. That is followed by Friday, bring your wagons to the Senior Center, 3 to 7. You can decorate a wagon, then you can let it park and hang out at the Senior Center overnight. So you don't have to worry about taking your wagon back and forth. The more creative the wagon design, the better. And that brings you then to Saturday, the 4th of July. So the farmers market moves to Memorial Field. So the farmers market will launch at normal time at 9 a.m. on the 4th. We will then, at 10 a.m., have the parade will start. And so, I don't know, there's a lot of cool stuff in the parade. It's I was getting a rundown from Lindsay Marsh on the parade items. There's going to be horses, going to be marching bands, there's going to be clowns, and a lot of cool decorated wagons. And so that'll be at 10 a.m. on the 4th. That's, you can do your wagons, bring your pets. And then that evening there will be fireworks on Lake Sammamish. So people can go watch the fireworks on Lake Sammamish. I think that will go off roughly at 10 o'clock. And the following Tuesday, July 7th, is the first Kiwanis Concerts on the Green and a prom date mixtape. I suggest you bring the disco gliders. They're good. It's especially if you like 80s music. So I've seen them before at Magnolia Summerfest, and I think it's an excellent way to launch the Concerts on the Green series. That'll be Tuesday at the Community Center at 7, July 7th. And with that, we are now at Good of the Order. Good of the Order. Not saying Good of the Order. Our next meetings are Monday, July 13th, Committee of the Whole. Oh, emergency management training right here. I heard it's going to be crazy stuff. I heard you're all going to gather around a table and be put through emergency management training exercises. Council members safety training as well. The IT staff will be offering an optional help session at 5:30 p.m. on July 13th if you have any tech issues with your devices. Monday, July 20th will be our council meeting. For this meeting normally would have happened July 6th. The last World Cup game is July 6th, so we actually did it on June 29th. So our next city council meeting will not be until the 20th. We will then have, I think, Del Markey Crimp will give you options on proposed automated license plate reader camera use policies. I think just in full transparency, I think the options will be presented in July, but I think the focus is going to be on getting the budget adopted this year. So I think you're going to have plenty of time to think on those options, because I don't think we're probably going to dive into which options to go down until the first quarter of next year. Street standards, frontage improvements for public utility projects will be addressed. Park bond renewal, pro and con committee appointments will be made, along with the climate plan action update. And there is no executive session tonight. And yes, I completely lost the prediction of when this meeting would end by a whopping 40 minutes, because it is now 10:37. We are adjourned.